Chapter 30-22. It's nothing. Xiaohua waved his hand humbly. I was just lucky to have a technique that could subdue this monster. What you used just now, was it the hand of a nascent soul? Ling Zhengyi couldn't help but ask. Xiaohua shook his head. I'm not a nascent soul cultivator. How could I use the hand of a nascent soul cultivator? It's just a technique that's similar to the hand of a nascent soul cultivator. Shui curled her lips and looked at Xiaohua reproachfully. Ling Zhengyi might not know, but Shui was very clear. In the past, Sun Ming had inadvertently told Shui about the techniques of nascent soul cultivators. The hand of a nascent soul cultivator was one of the techniques commonly used by nascent soul cultivators. Normally, nascent soul cultivators would use this technique to conceal their techniques. But since Xiaohua didn't admit it, Shui wouldn't point it out. That monster was extremely powerful. Father and I weren't its match, but you subdued it in an instant. Ling Feiyun asked again. Senior brother, compared to a few decades ago, SK, you're many times stronger now. Although Ling Feiyun didn't ask about Xiaohua's cultivation level, his words were full of curiosity. Shui said, Junior brother Xiao went through the baptism of the Dao sword battle. It's normal for his cultivation level to improve greatly. Otherwise, where would his achievements come from? That's right. At the mention of the Dao sword battle, Ling Feiyun's eyes lit up again. He said anxiously, Senior brother Xiao, tell me, how did you kill Qin Jian? That's a swordsman comparable to a late golden core cultivator. Xiaohua smiled bitterly and said helplessly, Feiyun, it's not that I don't want to answer you. It's just that in order to answer this question, I've worn my lips thin. I don't even know how many times I've said the same thing. Please spare your elder brother. You'd better tell me about this fiery ape-like monster. Yes. I understand. I won't ask any more questions. Ling Feiyun was actually very familiar with how Xiaohua and Li Zongbao killed Qin Jian, but seeing Xiaohua with his own eyes, he couldn't help but ask. Ling Zhengyi thought for a moment and said with a bitter smile, I won't hide it from fellow Taoist Xiao. This monster suddenly appeared from the ancestral shrine an hour ago. I don't know how it broke through the restrictions of my Misty Mountain and quietly entered. Fellow Taoist, you've also seen the ferocity and methods of that monster. How could the disciples of my Misty Mountain be a match for it? Before I noticed, most of the disciples were injured by this monster. Fortunately, this monster was merciful. I have already checked just now, and none of the disciples have died. And this Ling father and son were captured by this monster in just a few moves. I don't understand what the monster is mumbling about. Just when that monster was about to use Feiyun as a threat, the entire dense fog mountain was filled with lightning. I think fellow Taoist Xiao must have arrived in time. Speaking up to here, Ling Zhengyi bowed once more and said, I thank fellow Taoist Xiao once more. This is already the second time fellow Taoist Xiao has saved my Misty Mountain from a life-and-death situation. Get up. Xiaohua hurriedly helped Ling Zhengyi up and said with a smile, You guys are all lucky because of Shui. If she didn't want to go back to the Misty Mountain to take a look, I'm afraid the consequences would be unimaginable. Ling Zhengyi didn't ask Shui previously. Now, he was a little puzzled. Looking at Shui, he said, Shui, you've cultivated to the late stage of foundation establishment with great difficulty. Your cultivation has already surpassed Uncle's. Your future is limitless. If you have nothing to do, don't miss Misty Mountain. Otherwise, it will cause the dissatisfaction of the Imperial Thunder Sect. Yes, this boy understands. Shui didn't have an extremely clear view of the sect like Fairy Xianxia. Every action of hers represented the Imperial Thunder Sect. Thus, she casually agreed. Xiaohua thought for a moment and said, Looking at that fire ape's meaning, it should be familiar with that monster. And that monster should also be looking for the fire ape in Misty Mountain. It's just that I don't know how the two beasts met and what their motives are. Ling Feiyun shrugged his shoulders and said with a bitter smile, That's right. I also don't understand what that monster is saying. If it really looks similar to the fire ape, then I should be able to understand. But it looks similar to a human, and its words can't be understood. Who knows what it wants to do? This, when I have the chance in the future, I will ask. Xiaohua nodded and said, Fellow Taoist Xiao. Ling Zhengyi looked at Shui and said in a low voice, This fire ape should be related to our Misty Mountain. Even Xianxia is related to it. How did you capture it? Xianxia's face also revealed a smile and asked, Junior brother Zhao's surprise should be this fire ape, right? Yes, it's this fire ape. Xiaohua said with a smile. I remember that day when you were refining the sun-moon corona, there was still a soul seal that was not broken. You once said that you wanted to rely on this fire ape. Therefore, this Xiao captured the fire ape and brought it here. It just so happens that we can break the last soul imprint of the sun-moon corona in this fog mountain and fulfill your wish. Thank you, Xiaohua. Xianxia couldn't help but say. As for this fire ape, it's a long story. Xiaohua said, and briefly explained the situation of him capturing the fire ape. Oh my! After Ling Feiyun finished listening, he was extremely shocked and said, Senior brother Xiao, you said that this fire ape actually broke into the Meng Mountains by itself. It actually has a relationship with the drought demon there? Yes. Xiaohua patted his spirit storage pouch and said with a smile, This fire ape is a person with a wide range of connections. It has face wherever it goes. It's really useful. Otherwise, how could I keep it? This fire ape. I don't know how long it has lived. According to what I know, just being imprisoned in the Flame Forest Marsh alone would take more than 1,000 years, right? Ling Zhengyi sighed and said, Maybe before it was imprisoned, it was also a famous person. No matter how powerful it is, it can't be compared to senior brother Xiao. Ling Feiyun said with a smile, After 1,000 years, didn't it obediently fall into senior brother Zhao's hands? Forget it, it's not about this. Xiaohua waved his hand and looked at the stairs in the distance that were almost cleaned up. He said with a smile, Fellow Taoist Ling, you should first fix the restriction of the Misty Mountain. I came here in a panic and tore the formation. It's okay. Even if the whole thing is torn, what's the big deal? After all, it's to save us father and son. Ling Zhengyi waved his hand and said, Later, I will take the formation diagram and spend some more spirit stones. Fellow Taoist Ling, you should take care of this first. I will follow Xianxia to the back mountain. Since we have already asked for leave from the sect, we will stay in the Misty Mountain for a few more days and see if we can break the Sun-Moon Crown's soul seal. Xiaohua said with a smile. Okay, Ling Zhengyi nodded and didn't say anything else. He brought Ling Feiyun and many other disciples to repair the formation. Although Ling Zhengyi said it lightly, the entire battle was weakened by Xiaohua. The center of the formation was even torn. How could it be easy to repair? Without several days or even 10 days of work, it was impossible to completely repair it. Of course, now that Xiaohua, a nascent soul realm cultivator of the Imperial Thunder Sect, was in charge of the Misty Mountain, Ling Zhengyi wasn't afraid of people coming to provoke them. Arriving at the palace that still looked cold and desolate, Xiaohua held Xianxia's hand and sighed with emotion. Time seemed to flow and they returned to several decades ago. The two's appearance didn't change. This palace was also old and messy as before, but Xiangyang and Yan Qinglian weren't by their side. Xiaohua accompanied Xianxia to walk around the palace a few times, but didn't see anything special. He smiled and asked, Wife, it seems like this palace belongs to you alone. Fellow Taoist Ling and the others didn't even take half a step into this place. In the future, when you and I dual cultivate, this will be our residence. Of course. Xianxia said with a smile, If Xiaohua is willing, you can come here often in the future. It's just that although this place looks grand, there are no people. Wouldn't it be lonely with just the two of us? Speaking of this, Xianxia's face immediately turned red. As Xianxia expected, Xiaohua wrapped his arms around Xianxia and said with a smile, Then we can give birth to a group of children and teach them cultivation every day. Wouldn't this palace be lively? Xianxia didn't dodge, which was rare, and said with a bit of infatuation in her eyes, Yes, this is also what I was thinking. With so many children, would I be lonely? Xiaohua hugged Xianxia, and Xianxia looked at the cold palace. It seemed that only the two of them were there, and this warmth gradually warmed up the entire palace. After a long time, Xiaohua said in a low voice, Xianxia, don't worry, I will accompany you, no matter if the world is old or the seas are dry and the rocks are rotten. Xianxia smiled and said, I know. I will also follow you, no matter if it's the imperial court or the 9 underworlds. At this point, Xiaohua and Xue didn't want to say another word. They could only feel each other's sincerity through the intertwining of their fingers. Seeing that the sky was getting dark, Xiaohua said in a low voice, "Wife, should I release the fire ape? Should I take out the sun-moon corona and break the last restriction?" Xue moved her gaze away from the twilight and looked at Xiaohua with some reluctance. She shook her head and said, "Let's forget about it for today. Let's wait a few more days. I'm a bit tired." Hearing that Xue was a bit tired, Xiaohua didn't say anything else and hurriedly nodded. "Sit down, I'll rest on your lap for a while." Xue looked around and said in a low voice. Xiaohua looked at Xue's pale face and didn't understand why she suddenly acted so inappropriately. He hurriedly clapped his hands and took out a few praying mats and placed them on the ground. Xue laid on the praying mat beside Xiaohua and rested her head on Xiaohua's lap. Feeling the warmth on Xue's neck, Xiaohua placed his hand on Xue's black hair and gently stroked it. "Darling Xiao." Xue's voice was a bit ethereal. "I really like this kind of time. Even if you and I don't have much cultivation, even if you and I don't have much lifespan, as long as you can quietly accompany me like this, I don't need any other pursuits." Chapter 30-23. Silly child, Xiaohua smiles. "You and I have succeeded in cultivation. Even if we don't work hard now, we will still have several hundred years of lifespan. Wait until I receive my reward for the battle. Then I will ask Master's wife to come to your Sunlei Palace to propose marriage. It doesn't matter if your Sunlei Palace agrees or not. You are going to be my wife in any case. In the future, your husband doesn't dare to say that I will accompany you quietly every night, but I can always stay by your side, watch your happiness, watch your sadness, accompany you in your cultivation, accompany you in your adventures. I can always promise you that." "Yes, I believe Xiao can do it." Xue tilts her head and says very solemnly, "This misty mountain is where I was born. Xiaohua must take care of it in the future. I won't talk about Uncle's matter, but you have to worry about Fei Yun." "I know," Xiaohua says with a smile. "Fei Yun is sincere, different from his father. I also like him very much. If there is anything inappropriate in the future, you can let him find us." "Why did you suddenly think of this today?" "It's nothing," Xue says with a smile. Fei Yun didn't enter a cultivation sect, so Misty Mountain also doesn't have any backing. This kind of cultivation family will have some difficulties in the Xiaoyu continent, so I said a few more words. Hee, don't we still have you and me? What are you afraid of?" Xiaohua says with a smile. "I made a bit of a name in the great battle of Daowen's sword. If others know of my relationship with Misty Mountain, I'm afraid they won't come looking for trouble, right?" "Yes. You are absolutely right." Xue answers somewhat drowsily, and after a while, she actually falls asleep. A bitter smile hangs on Xiaohua's lips. He knows that as long as a cultivator hasn't reached the stage of mental and physical exhaustion, they can generally use meditation to replace sleep. But Xue actually fell asleep like this. She must have been cultivating diligently all this time, and her heart must be extremely bitter. Looking at Xue's pale face and her slightly knitted brows, Xiaohua doesn't even dare to move, and also closes his eyes. However, Xiaohua didn't fall asleep like Xue. Instead, his mind entered the space and urged the human-shaped origin spirit to continue refining pills. He also took out the bone that was used to refine the heaven-pacifying rod and carefully examined it. To an ordinary person, a night was just closing and opening their eyes. Their mind was still thinking about everything that happened before they went to sleep. Even a child who didn't know any better would think that they weren't asleep at all. For a cultivator like Xiaohua who was already used to squandering the night, it was even more so in the blink of an eye. Xue, who was resting on Xiaohua's lap, moved slightly. Xiaohua immediately opened his eyes and saw that there were some faint traces of moisture on his Taoist robe. Xue seemed to be trying to cover it up. Xiaohua smiled. He thought that this was saliva left behind by Xue when she was sleeping. It was common for ordinary people to have such saliva. However, cultivators' control over their bodies had long surpassed that of ordinary people. It was only when Xue was completely relaxed and didn't treat herself as a cultivator. Only when her spiritual power was completely relaxed could such an extremely rare situation occur. Xue got up from Xiaohua's side and stretched lazily. Her hands stretched over her head, and her towering chest trembled even more. An indescribable temptation made Xiaohua's heart heat up. Shui very keenly glared at Xiaohua and said, I seem to have not slept like this since I was 4 or 5 years old. Last night, I seem to have returned to childhood. It really was a dreamless night, a sweet sleep. Xiaohua somewhat awkwardly covered up his Taoist robe. Although he had already succeeded in refining his body and tempering his bones, he still couldn't control his body's natural reaction. Of course, he didn't need to hide too much in front of Shui. He immediately smiled and said, We cultivators pursue the heavenly Tao and meditate. Although we can meditate instead of sleep, the excitement of ordinary people's sleep is gone. I don't know if it's a gain or a loss. Gains and losses are all in a single thought. Who knows if it's a gain or a loss? Shui tidied up her Taoist robe and looked at the empty palace hall. She said, Perhaps when my ancestors built this palace in my early years, they felt it was a great achievement. But now, this palace is empty and devoid of people. What's the difference between this and not building it? Wouldn't the gains from my early years have already become nothing? As she said that, she said with some hidden bitterness, Perhaps being able to accompany my husband Xiao and sleep sweetly is still better than this gain, right? Haha, you're indeed a late-stage foundation establishment cultivator. You've comprehended more than your husband. Xiaohua laughed loudly. TCH, no matter how much I cultivate, I've been in seclusion day and night for these 10 years, and I'm only at the late stage of foundation establishment. Shui curled her lips and said, But husband, you actually have the strength of a nascent soul cultivator in just one big battle. Thinking about it, I'm disheartened. No matter how much I cultivate, I can't catch up to you. Don't compare with me. Xiaohua looked around with a narcissistic appearance and said proudly, This Xiao is a cultivation genius that only appears once in 10 million years in Dawn Rain Continent. In the future, the heavy responsibility of saving Dawn Rain Continent will fall on this Xiao. If this Xiao's cultivation isn't high, how can I carry out heaven's will? Heavenly Tao, luck Tao. This sentence seemed to have poked Shui. Shui was immediately dumbfounded like a clay statue. What's wrong? Xiaohua didn't dare to say too much, afraid of disturbing Shui's comprehension. After waiting for half a cup of tea's time, he saw a trace of enlightenment on Shui's face. Only then did he ask, Nothing. You have your luck Tao, I have my luck Tao. Our luck Tao might be different. You're a shooting star and I'm a firefly, but this luck Tao is ultimately mine. Shui smiled. Since that's the case, what else do I have to complain about? What do you have to complain about? Xiaohua asked curiously. Nothing. Shui shook her head. Husband, this was left behind by this concubine's ancestor. It really is a secret technique to break the last restriction of the sun-moon corona. This concubine can't wait to see what kind of luck Tao this concubine has. As she spoke, Shui carefully took out a red string from around her neck. She was unwilling to tear the string apart, and took out a milky white jade pendant from between her jade-like breasts. When placed in Xiaohua's hand, it still had its own warmth and sweetness. Xiaohua's heart unconsciously swayed, and he glanced at Shui with a smile. Shui's skin was originally white, and now that it flashed with a blush, it became even more like the jade in Xiaohua's hand. A beauty like jade, a sword like a rainbow. The ancients really didn't lie. Xiaohua sighed and immersed his divine sense into the jade pendant. At first, Xiaohua's expression was still indifferent, but after looking for a while, he frowned. Raising his head to look at Shui, he asked doubtfully, Shui, are you sure this is a secret technique left behind by your ancestor, to break the last restriction of the sun-moon corona? What's wrong? Shui was startled and asked curiously. This jade pendant is something this concubine has been carrying on her since she could remember. Is there something wrong with it? It's nothing. Xiaohua shook his head. Presumably, you've seen it yourself. Don't you think the technique inside is too strange? If you didn't know your husband, I'm afraid you really wouldn't be able to find a suitable person to break the last restriction of the sun-moon corona. Isn't this concubine's luck? Shui laughed. If you can't find a suitable person, this restriction will always be with you and won't be broken. As far as this concubine knows, This restriction of the sun-moon corona has been in place for a very long time. And Xiaohua didn't say anything else, and carefully examined and comprehended it. This examination took several days. There were many things inside the jade pendant. Besides the method to break the sun-moon corona's restriction, there were also some other secret techniques. Shui didn't forbid Xiaohua from looking, so he casually looked through them. Among them was the method to create a life and death slip. With one glance, Xiaohua knew that this was the pink jade pendant that Shui gave him. It was also very clear that unless the caster opened it himself, the restriction of the life and death slip could only be removed after the caster died. However, Xiaohua only looked at it, and then focused on breaking the sun-moon corona's restriction. As Xiaohua said, this method was very strange. It actually involved the blood shadow technique. Although Xiaohua knew the Devil Realm's blood coagulation technique, there were still some differences, so he had to be careful. Seeing that Xiaohua was comprehending, Shui didn't disturb him and left the palace. The front of the misty mountain had now returned to normal. The thick fog in the sky gradually surged. Although the fog was very uneven, it was obvious that the misty mountain's protective formation had only been repaired for a few days. Sister. Seeing Shui coming out from the back of the mountain, Ling Feiyun had already flown down from the sky and called out with a smile. Yes, Feiyun. Has the formation been repaired? Shui dotingly looked at her brother who grew up with her. In 4 days. Ling Feiyun looked at the sky. Father and I have already done our best, but we are not very proficient in formations, so it will take a lot of effort to repair it. Oh, I forgot. Shui said with a smile. Xiaohua knows formations, so we should let him repair it. Ah, senior brother Xiao also knows formations. Ling Feiyun was really surprised. Little brother thinks that senior brother Xiao must be a person who concentrates on cultivation. Moreover, I heard from sister that he is a rogue cultivator, so he doesn't know formations. He seems to know everything. Shui thought for a moment and said, and he is very good at everything. Can he have children? Ling Feiyun very mysteriously blinked his eyes. Shui's face was stunned. She glared at Ling Feiyun and scolded, Feiyun, you are courting death. I don't dare. Ling Feiyun pretended to be afraid and raised his hand. Little brother just wanted to remind sister that father was talking about it the day before yesterday. You should also hold the dual cultivation ceremony, right? Little brother heard that. At this point, Ling Feiyun lowered his voice and said, Senior brother Xiao seems to have an affair with Huanhua Sec's Xianxia fairy. Sister, you must be careful. What do you mean by an affair? Shui said unhappily, Xianxia fairy and Xiaohua have known each other for a long time. If you are talking about an affair, aren't you talking about sister? Chapter 30-24. Ah! When Ling Feiyun heard this, he was a little dumbfounded. He hurriedly said, It's all my fault. However, elder sister, if you're talking about this, then you must seize the opportunity even more. Senior brother Xiao and fairy Xianxia have been fighting in the Dao sword battle for more than 10 years. Yet you are cultivating alone in the Imperial Thunder Sect? Now that senior brother Xiao and Xianxia fairy are famous, if the two of them cultivate together, many people would like to see it. And you don't need to say this. Shui nodded, knowing that this was the concern of a relative. Sister naturally knows what to do. Today, sister entrusted you with a task. I was afraid that you didn't know Xianxia fairy. Since you know her, then it's best. Shui patted her hand and took out a pink jade slip from her storage bag. She handed it to Ling Feiyun and said, This is for Xianxia fairy. When sister and Xiaohua leave the Misty Mountain, you go to the Huanhua sect. You must personally give this to Xianxia fairy. This. Ling Feiyun took the jade slip and was a little confused. Can't you give it to her yourself? You let sister and Xianxia fairy fight for Xiaohua. How can sister lower her head and look for her? Shui laughed. But Ling Feiyun put away the jade slip and didn't dare to rashly look at it. He scratched his head and said, Xianxia fairy is a meritorious disciple of the Huanhua sect. Can I see her? Don't worry, as long as you say that you are sister's brother, she will definitely see you. Shui laughed. Moreover, you can also tell her that you want to bring her news of Xiaohua. Okay. Ling Feiyun naturally couldn't refuse Xue's request. He nodded and then said with a smile, "Sister, can you talk to senior brother Xiao and give me some pointers in my cultivation? Look at you. You are now in the late stage of foundation establishment. You have already surpassed father. Senior brother Xiao. Alas, there is no need to talk about him. I have been cultivating for so long. Since the last time I saw senior brother Xiao, my true blood was stimulated and my cultivation advanced by leaps and bounds. Now, in these few years, I seem to have reached a bottleneck and can't break through. If I can get senior brother Zhao's pointers. If that's the case, I think you should rely on yourself." When Xue hears this, she immediately shakes her head and says, "First of all, Xiaohua isn't your master. He doesn't know the details of your cultivation. His words can only be based on his own understanding. His understanding. Sigh, I won't hide it from you. Even if elder sister is in this realm, I'm afraid it's not easy for her to understand, let alone you. Maybe it won't bring you any benefits. Instead, it will give you more questions, which is not beneficial to your cultivation. Secondly, on the path of cultivation, bottlenecks exist at all times. If you always want to borrow power, how can you go far on the path of cultivation? Today, Xiaohua helped you break through your bottleneck, but what about in the future? Listen to elder sister. Elder sister has been in closed-door meditation for more than 10 years. I don't know how many bottlenecks she has encountered, but elder sister has overcome all of them. Isn't elder sister already a late-stage foundation establishment cultivator? Thinking back to when we were young, we thought that foundation establishment was already amazing, but now, Jindan is also within reach." "Yes, I understand." Ling Feiyun nodded thoughtfully. "Moreover, elder sister doesn't want to ask Xiaohua for anything right now, and even more, I don't want others to look down on our misty mountain." Xue pursed her lips and smiled. "Yes." Ling Feiyun puffed out his chest and said, "Since little brother didn't enter the Xianghua sect, and chose my misty mountain's inheritance, then he will face a difficult path. Little brother will walk this path to the end." "Good, you have ambition. With this kind of heart, you may not be too far behind Xiaohua." Xue said with a smile, then looked at the place where Ling Feiyun just landed, and said, "Let's go, let's see how uncle's repair is going." After staying in the Misty Mountain for a full 3 days, seeing that the Misty Mountain's array was repaired, Xiaohua sent a message to Xue to return to the palace. When Ling Zhengyi was repairing the array, he had already heard Xue mention this matter, and he was also a bit excited in his heart. After all, Xue's relationship with the Misty Mountain was a bit different, and he also felt that he owed Xue something. Moreover, he himself had long understood the restrictions in the Sun-Moon Corona, and he had even worked on it a long time ago. Wasn't the Flame Forest Mountain's action of releasing the fire ape one of his actions? Of course, Ling Zhengyi also had some principles, and he didn't take away the jade that belonged to Xue, and had always been leaving it to Xue. Of course, as for the ownership of the Sun-Moon Corona, it was already a mess, and even Ling Zhengyi didn't know whether it belonged to the Misty Mountain or Xue. The mystery that he wanted to know for many years was now about to be solved, and Ling Zhengyi naturally had some expectations. Therefore, when they saw Xiaohua send a message, the two immediately urged Xue to return. Even the two of them wanted to follow. However, due to the ancestral teachings, Ling Zhengyi and Ling Feiyun couldn't get close to the palace, and only Xue returned. As soon as Xue entered the palace, she saw Xiaohua forming hand seals, and as he muttered, the fire ape rolled back and forth in front of the palace's entrance. Needless to say, when Xiaohua let the fire ape out, it grimaced in pain. Xue didn't say anything, and just stood to the side. After waiting for half a cup of tea, the fire ape was tormented enough, and weakly curled up on the ground. Only then did Xiaohua stop his hand seals, and coldly said, "This Xiao has always been benevolent, and won't make things too difficult for others. Now that you've fallen into this Xiao's hands, you should be respectful and obedient, and if this Xiao is happy, maybe I'll let you go. Otherwise, this Xiao will take care of you every time I let you out." It was unknown whether the fire ape understood or not, but it kept groaning, and the ominous glint in its crimson eyes didn't weaken. It was far from the obedient appearance of the monster that Xiaohua later put into his spirit storage bag. Humph! Xiaohua also didn't find it strange, and with a point of his finger, a sharp sword light was born, and it pierced the fire ape's calf, and a wisp of blood flowed out from the wound. However, the fire ape had already stopped groaning, and it was firm, and it didn't even groan. Xiaohua grabbed with his hand, and that wisp of blood flew into the air, and condensed into a thumb-sized ball of blood in front of Xiaohua's eyes. Xiaohua glanced at the fire ape, and the golden light around his body flourished, and a wisp of spiritual fire was immediately spat out from his mouth. Then, his magic power surged out like a wave, and he used the spiritual fire to burn that ball of blood according to the blood-refining technique in the jade pendant. Looking at the spiritual fire dancing in the air as if it had a life of its own, and the wisps of fire were like spirit snakes going in and out of the blood, the fire ape's eyes clearly flashed with shock. However, this shock was driven away by its unruly nature as the flames danced in its eyes. Seeing that the ball of blood was getting smaller and smaller, and was only the size of a soybean, that ball of blood suddenly swelled in the spiritual fire, and a weak ape's roar came from that ball of blood. Although it was very light, that kind of anger and unruly nature was extremely clear. Roar! The fire ape couldn't bear it anymore, and it roared towards the sky, echoing the roar from the ball of blood. Then, the fire ape began to become irritable again, and the flames around its body became dazzling again. If it was at the beginning, Xiaohua feared that it would be difficult to control the situation, but at this time, Xiaohua was already familiar with the blood-refining technique. While he controlled the spiritual fire, he cast a spell in his hand, and the fire ape rolled on the ground again under the effect of the sun-moon corona. However, Shueshue also clearly saw that the fire ape's irritation was not only because of the roar from the ball of blood, but also because the fire ape would occasionally tilt its head and look inside the palace from time to time. It seemed that this familiar place provoked the fire ape's ferocious nature. Roar! A slightly loud ape's roar sounded again, and an inch-long fire ape's shadow emerged from the ball of blood, and at the same time, the ball of blood unexpectedly turned into a wisp of black smoke and disappeared in midair. Rise! Xiaohua pointed his hand at the fire ape, and the sun-moon corona issued a rumbling sound, and unexpectedly flew from the fire ape's forehead. The fire ape's face showed joy, and the flames around its body flourished, and it was about to rush towards the palace door. You think you can escape? Xiaohua sneered, and with a flick of his left hand, the universe inside sleeve covered the fire ape and easily put it into the spirit storage bag. Wang 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 wang. The sun-moon corona slowly rotated in midair, and the sound became louder and louder. Shueshue, you also take out a drop of heart's blood. Xiaohua methodically controlled the sun-moon corona, and cast a spell. The two magic tools of the sun-moon corona rotated, and a burst of obscure magic power was born from the gap, slowly spreading to the entire palace. Shueshue did not dare to neglect, and hurriedly patted her chest, and a drop of dark red flew out, and Shueshue's face instantly turned white. Go! Xiaohua looked distressed, and the spiritual fire lingering on the fire ape's shadow rushed to Shueshue's blood essence, and condensed like before. It seemed that Shueshue's blood essence was even more difficult to condense than the fire ape's. After the time it took for an incense stick to burn, Xiaohua's forehead was covered in sweat. Roar! A hoarse roar that was like muffled thunder suddenly rushed into Shueshue's ears. Shueshue raised her eyebrows, and surprise appeared in her eyes. An inch-long lightning beast phantom actually flew out of the blood essence. Ah! Shueshue turned pale with fright. She was previously thinking that if her blood shadow came out, it would be very embarrassing if it was naked. But she never thought that it was actually the ugly lightning beast's doing, especially that although it was very small, it had extremely obvious breasts. Shueshue's face was abnormally red. She stole a glance at Xiaohua, and contrary to Shueshue's expectations, Xiaohua, who always cared about this, actually had a dignified expression, and simply did not have time to look at the blood shadow. Because his spell was once again like rain falling on the sun-moon corona. Along with the roar of the sun-moon corona, the two magic tools gradually emitted a golden and silver brilliance, and the two brilliants alternately flashed, illuminating the entire palace, and the brilliance even penetrated the palace, attracting the attention of Ling Zhengyi and Ling Feiyun. Rumble! Suddenly, a thunderous sound came from the sun-moon corona, and at the same time, an extremely dazzling electric light came from the sun-moon corona, and unexpectedly, Shueshue couldn't help but close her eyes. Chapter 30-25. At the same time Shueshue closed her eyes, she couldn't help but groan in her heart. She really didn't expect that although Xiaohua's refining of the sun-moon corona was dangerous, it was never that complicated. Now it was only the last restriction, but it was actually so complicated. Moreover, She finally understood what Xiaohua meant. Aside from Xiaohua, it really wasn't easy for her to find another cultivator who could break this restriction. Go! Xiaohua was clearly also stunned, but he was calm. He waved his hand, and the spirit fire wrapped around the fire ape and rushed into the moon's shadow. Roar! The sound of the fire ape became louder, and at the same time, the entire moon shadow emitted a brilliant electric light. It was several times brighter than the moon in the night sky. It surrounded the radiant sun and spun at an incomparably fast speed. It was almost impossible to see its outline. Shue shue, sit cross-legged. Xiaohua shouted. Right now. As he spoke, Xiaohua pointed at the spirit fire again. The spirit fire flashed a trace of fire, and the lightning beast's shadow was also pulled into the radiant sun. Roar! Similarly, after the lightning beast's hoarse roar, the radiant sun emitted rolling thunder. The entire radiant sun began to spin on its own, and the direction it was spinning in was completely different from the moon's shadow. This. Xiaohua finally stopped. He was somewhat dumbstruck as he looked at the strange scene in front of him. Right now, the outline of the sun-moon corona could no longer be seen. There was only the rolling thunder in the middle and the flashing electric light at the edges of the thunder. A kind of déjà vu feeling slowly emerged in Xiaohua's heart. Kacha, a loud thunder sound shook the entire palace. The soul imprint in the sun-moon corona actually broke free from the magic tool, and became several feet large. That soul imprint violently shook, and the surrounding space gradually distorted. Traces of black gas with green light appeared from the void, and rushed towards that tumbling soul imprint. Ah! Xiaohua looked at it with some surprise. Before he could open his mouth to ask Shue Shue, who was already sitting cross-legged, the soul imprint actually shattered, turning into thousands of green lights like fireflies. These fireflies seemed to have a life of their own. They flapped their invisible wings and flew up. Soon, they gathered into a pitch-black shadow with a flickering green light. This shadow was somewhat similar to the Thunder Beast. However, when Xiaohua took a closer look, there were still some differences. However, before Xiaohua could take a closer look, a pitch-black brilliance shot out from the black shadow's eyes and shone directly between Shue Shue's eyebrows. A pitch-black pattern that looked like a bolt of lightning was born from that brilliance. When the pattern was formed, a huge gust of wind blew, and thunder rumbled. Boom! An incomprehensible sound was faintly discernible. It was extremely obscure and ancient. Following this sound, the black shadow turned into a bolt of lightning and rushed into Shue Shue's forehead. Ah! Shue Shue let out a heart-wrenching scream as she held her head with both hands and fainted on the ground. Shue Shue! Xiaohua was shocked. He rushed to Shue Shue's side and grabbed her wrist. After carefully inspecting, Xiaohua was relieved. His gaze fell on Shue Shue's pale face. He saw a pitch-black brilliance flickering on Shue Shue's pale face. It was extremely rhythmic, and following this rhythm, the lightning pattern between her eyebrows was also pulsating, as if it was the same flashing heart. Another inheritance. Xiaohua frowned. He saw Fairy Xianxia obtain the inheritance of the phoenix in the ancestral shrine of Million Meng Mountains. Now, he saw Shue Shue obtain the inheritance of the Thunder Beast in Misty Mountain. If only one person obtained the inheritance, then it would be rare. However, if everyone could obtain the inheritance, then wouldn't it be common? This Xiaoyu continent is about to change. Xiaohua couldn't help but think. Xiaohua waited for an hour, but he didn't see any signs of Shue Shue waking up. Thus, he raised his head and looked at the sun-moon corona that was still flashing with lightning. He pointed his finger and the magic tool gradually stopped. With a so sound, a message talisman flew in from outside the hall and landed in front of Shue Shue. Xiaohua knew that Ling Zhengyi was worried about Shue Shue. Just as he was about to stand up, a pata sound rang out. Something fell out of the sun-moon corona. Oh! Xiaohua's eyes swept over the object, and he couldn't help but stare blankly. The object that fell out of the sun-moon corona was actually a grayish-white bone. Soul cultivator? Xiaohua grabbed the bone with his hand and examined it with his soul sense. Shaking his head slightly, he seemed to be muttering to himself. So it really is a soul cultivator. This Misty Mountain. Oh wait, Shue Shue's ancestor should be related to soul cultivators. Right, the Misty Mountain also has a rarely seen decorated archway, and the Misty Cloud sect has one as well. I heard Ling Zhengyi say that the Flying Phoenix Ridge also has a decorated archway. It seems they are both soul cultivator inheritances. If the Misty Cloud sect has the ability to control clouds and rain, then the Misty Mountains and Flying Phoenix Ridge. While thinking, Xiaohua subconsciously looked at the sun-moon corona that had stopped in midair. Forget it, I'll wait until Shui wakes up. Xiaohua stood up and walked out of the palace. In front of the back mountain, Ling Zhengyi, Ling Feiyun, and several dozen Misty Mountains disciples were anxiously waiting. After all, the commotion in the palace was too big. Fellow Taoist Xiao. Seeing Xiaohua fly out, Ling Zhengyi hurriedly asked, "How is Shui?" "She's already received the inheritance, but is currently unconscious. I'm afraid she's receiving it." Xiaohua smiled. "When the time is right, she should be able to wake up." That's good, that's good." Ling Zhengyi let out a sigh of relief, even a bit excited. "My Misty Mountains have been waiting for this moment for who knows how many years." This Ling didn't think this would happen to Shui. This Ling. Ling Zhengyi was so excited that he couldn't speak. The nearby disciples were also very excited when they heard this. "That's enough. Fellow Taoist Xiao. Hurry and go take care of Shui. Don't let anything happen to her." Ling Zhengyi woke up. This Ling also wants to pass this good news to Flying Phoenix Mountain Range. When the disciples there know about it, they will definitely be very happy. And this Xiao understands. Xiaohua nodded and flew back to the back mountain. Many disciples of Misty Mountains also dispersed happily. Xiaohua stayed by Shui's side. After 9 days, Shui slowly woke up. The strange thing was that the pitch-black lightning pattern actually dimmed and finally disappeared into the space between Shui's eyebrows. "Shui?" Xiaohua exclaimed in a low voice. Seeing Shui open her eyes, a pitch-black lightning flashed in her black pupils. "Darling Xiao," Shui replied, her brows slightly wrinkled. Obviously, her head was still in pain. "Is this your ancestors' inheritance?" Xiaohua probed. "I'm not sure," Shui unexpectedly replied. "Previously, this concubine only felt an intense pain as if an axe had split open my head. I fell into countless pitch-black lightning. Now, although it's not that painful, I only feel that my mind is in a mess. It's as if I understood something, but also as if I don't know anything. I don't have the slightest clue." Then take your time to explain." Xiaohua comforted, then clapped his hands and took out the bone. Handing it to Shui, he said, "This is something that fell from the sun-moon corona. Inside is a record of the Thunder Palace. It should be together with the soul seal." "What is this?" Shui took it and scanned it with her divine sense. Unexpectedly, she didn't see anything. Feeling strange, she asked, "How do you know that there is a record of the Thunder Palace here?" "This is a bone. It's used by soul cultivators to record things. It's similar to the jade slips of my Dao sect." Xiaohua smiled. "You can only use your soul consciousness to check it." "So it's like that." Shui understood. Looking at the empty hall to her left, she mocked herself. This concubine didn't know that this palace was called the Thunder Palace. Moreover, what could be recorded in the Thunder Palace? "Haha, you can't imagine that this Thunder Palace has a great origin." Xiaohua pointed with his hand and said, "This palace is only the surface. Inside, there are things related to thunder beasts. Of course, as for what exactly it is, this Xiao doesn't know." "This." Shui hesitated for a moment, then said in a low voice, "This matter. Does uncle need to know?" Xiaohua thought for a moment, then shook his head and said, "This husband doesn't know. However, since it's the ancestral teachings, it's best that he doesn't know. Moreover, if this matter were to spread, it would bring disaster to Misty Mountain. After all, Misty Mountain's current strength is still too weak." "All right, this concubine will listen to husband Xiao." Shui nodded. Looking at the empty palace again, she asked in confusion, "Where could the entrance be?" "This concubine has already carefully searched this palace." "Far away on the horizon, but close in front of you," Xiaohua pointed at the palace's door and said, "This palace's door is where the entrance is located." "How strange." Shui followed the direction of Xiaohua's finger and scanned it with her divine sense. However, other than the palace's door, She didn't see anything special. "Watch your husband," Xiaohua said with a smile. Then, Xiaohua's body flashed with a dark green brilliance, and a series of rumbling sounds flew out from his body. Then the green light turned into thumb-sized strange creatures and flew towards the palace's door. Boom! Another loud sound rang out, and countless green seal characters appeared at the palace's door. These green seal characters flew out in spirals and gradually extended until they reached Xiaohua and Shueshue's feet. Unexpectedly, they formed a long flight of stairs, and the end of the flight of stairs was right below the palace's door. "Let's go. Let's see what kind of secret is hidden under this thunder palace." Xiaohua pulled Shueshue's hand and stepped on the green seal characters. The green seal characters were like butterflies flapping their wings, carrying Xiaohua and Shueshue's divine bear down to the palace's door. "Husband Xiao." Shueshue looked at this magical moment and smiled. This seems to be the method of the Million Meng Mountain soul cultivators. Even if uncle is here and knows that the palace's door is the entrance, he shouldn't have any method to open the palace's door, right? I'm afraid it won't work. Xiaohua nodded. There should be a soul armament that can open the palace's door, but that soul armament consumes one's lifespan, so it's best not to use it. Chapter 30-26. Shueshue is a little shocked. Looking at Xiaohua's expression, she says anxiously, "Husband, are you all right?" Husband is fine," Xiaohua says. The two of them are already wrapped up by the green seal text and are pulled into the palace door. Xiaohua only sees a green light in front of his eyes. Moreover, he doesn't feel like he is being teleported. However, when he opens his eyes again, he and Shueshue are already in a huge space. This space is similar to the space Misty Cloud saw. There are no pillars. Everything in the space can be seen at a glance. Moreover, the entire space is filled with a faint green light. It is impossible to see where this light is coming from. "Darling Xiao." Shueshue stands beside Xiaohua. Looking left and right, she pulls Xiaohua's robe and points behind Xiaohua. She says in a low voice, "Look, what is this?" Hearing this, Xiaohua turns his head and is overjoyed. This is a stone wall that is more than 10 zhang tall. It is erected there, the bottom is touching the ground and the top is supporting the space. In front of this stone wall, there is a huge stone chair. It is also similar to the one in Misty Clouds. What is special is that behind this stone chair, there is a huge green seal text engraved on the stone wall. Lightning. It is indeed the lightning word. Xiaohua ponders. What word is this? Shueshue asks in a low voice. Lightning, lightning as in lightning. Xiaohua replies. Then, he looks again and says, "Shueshue, you stay a little further away. Your husband needs this green seal text." Shueshue hurriedly flies to the side and looks at Xiaohua with concern. Xiaohua walks to the front of the stone wall. The thousands of soul strands in Mingrua Tian pass through the magic eye imprint and reach towards the green seal text. When those soul strands touch the green seal text immediately flashes with green light. The entire text floats out from the stone wall and gradually turns into a huge word formed by many green seal text. Immediately after, these green seal text flashes one after another. Xiaohua's soul strands also trembles along with these flashes. In an instant, cryptic and strange syllables rang out clearly in Xiaohua's mind. Similar to the situation in the Misty Cloud sect, every time the syllable was released, the entire mysterious dark cloud would churn once. When the entire green seal text flashed once, the syllable also resounded once. Whether it was Mingrua sky, Qingshan sky, or Huanqi sky, real thunder was born out of nothing. This thunder was exactly the same as the thunder in the sky. Along with this thunder, countless bolts of lightning fell like rain. Thunder roll technique, Xiaohua squinted his eyes, carefully comprehending the green seal characters that were dancing around him, and thought to himself, this thunder roll technique is obviously different from the thunder drawing technique. The thunder beast's thunder drawing technique is to draw down the heavenly lightning that exists, and control it. But this thunder roll technique is to use the green seal characters to cause the heavenly lightning to change the heavens and earth, creating heavenly lightning out of nothing. The difference between the two is obvious. After a while, Xiaohua had already memorized the incantation of the thunder roll technique, and the 36 green seal characters also fell into Xiaohua's Mingrua sky. Looking at the stone wall again, the green seal characters had already dimmed quite a bit. When the green light around Xiaohua disappeared, he turned around, and Shui asked with concern, "Darling Xiao, how was it?" "Done," Xiaohua said with a smile. "With your husband taking action, what can't he do?" "Is that so? Then can you tell this concubine, who is sitting on this huge stone chair?" Shui pointed at the stone chair and asked, "What kind of chair does a normal person need? Such a huge stone chair is naturally for a giant to sit on." Xiaohua replied without hesitation, but when he said this, he was stunned again. Misty Cloud's sect had a huge stone chair, and Misty Mountains also had one. If it was for a giant to sit on, then wouldn't there be two giants? What does this giant have to do with the Huan country's giant? Then, the huge white bones in his space that he didn't know when he would be able to gather. Who was it? This concubine knows it's a giant, but does a normal person have such a big butt? Shui asked unhappily, "But what's this giant's origin, and what's its name?" "This husband doesn't know," Xiaohua said honestly. "Could it be there's no record in this bone?" Shui asked curiously. Xiaohua nodded. "Indeed, this bone only records the method to enter the Thunder Roll Palace and the spirit technique, nothing else." "All right," Shui helplessly looked to the left and pointed at a row of stone walls. "It seems like we've only seen that side, there's nothing special about the other places." "Maybe there is, it's just that we can't see it," Xiaohua corrected, and also flew to that row of stone walls with Shui. Xiaohua didn't care at first, but when he saw the words engraved on the stone walls, he couldn't help but be shocked. The stone walls were divided into 9, and each wall was engraved with many words. These words were the same as the divine fire technique that Xiaohua obtained. Since the divine fire technique was an ancient divine technique, then wouldn't the words engraved on the stone walls also be an ancient divine technique? Sure enough, when Xiaohua saw the 4 large words engraved on the first stone wall, he was so happy that he almost jumped up. That was because those 4 large words were precisely lightning refining technique. Wasn't Xiaohua looking for a refining technique that didn't belong to the 5 elements? Didn't this heavenly lightning not belong to the 5 elements? Then wasn't the lightning refining technique also a refining technique that didn't belong to the 5 elements? Truly wearing out iron shoes in a fruitless search, only to find it without any effort. Xiaohua clapped his hands and shouted. Seeing Xiaohua happy, Shui was also happy. Being able to do something for Xiaohua was her biggest wish. Although this Thunder Roll Palace was passed down by Shui's ancestor, Shui would rather give everything to Xiaohua, only hoping to be able to sleep peacefully. Xiaohua. Shui looked at these strange words, and really couldn't distinguish anything. Seeing that Xiaohua wanted to look carefully again, she hurriedly asked, "What is this thing?" "Oh, this is the lightning refining technique. It's an ancient refining technique that uses the power of heavenly lightning to refine an artifact." Seeing Shui ask, Xiaohua suddenly realized and hurriedly said, "It's really the refining technique that your husband has been looking for. Hee. Just now I was so happy that I forgot that this was passed down by my wife's ancestor. Your husband still has to ask for your permission first." Hee. Hearing Xiaohua's words, Shui pursed her lips and laughed. "Isn't everything of this concubine's husband? If you had asked this concubine first, then this concubine would have been unhappy. Now that you don't treat this concubine as an outsider, how can this concubine blame you?" Saying this, Shui looked to the left and frowned. "This place seems to have something else. Forget it, Xiaohua. Now only you can enter and exit this Thunder Palace. You should send this concubine out and comprehend it yourself." Xiaohua looked at the 9 stone walls and said with a bitter smile, "It seems that this is even more complicated than Zhongling Mountain Villa's refining the world. I have no choice but to inconvenience my wife. Being able to do something for my husband, this concubine is very happy." Shui pulled Xiaohua's hand and said with a smile, "While my husband cultivates here, this concubine will accompany uncle and brother. Isn't this the best of both worlds?" "Ha ha." Xiaohua held Shui's hand and said, "Your husband only needs to remember this refining technique. There's no need to completely comprehend it here." Unexpectedly, Shui immediately shook her head and said, "This concubine feels that my husband should stay here and comprehend more. After all, it's not easy to come to Misty Mountain. In the future, Saying this, Shui helplessly smiled. Yes, Xiaohua entered and exited Thunder Palace's Chonglei Peak as if he was walking on flat ground. Wouldn't coming to Misty Mountain be as easy as lifting a finger? As you wish. Shui waved her hand. This concubine just feels that you'll definitely have a lot of things to do in the future. It's better to take advantage of this leisure time to comprehend more. Yes. Xiaohua said with a long voice. Your husband will listen to my wife's instructions. While laughing, Xiaohua sent Shui out. After standing in the palace, Shui hesitated and asked again. Xiaohua, this underground Thunder Palace is so secretive. In the future, you and I will be disciples of the Thunder Palace. I'm afraid that it won't be good for us to come back often. Can you make something like a formation plate? And give it to Feiyun? Xiaohua shook his head without hesitation. I'm afraid that won't be possible. Not to mention that this involves the ancient refining technique. Just entering and exiting the Thunder Palace will consume one's lifespan. How can it be used by ordinary people? Didn't your husband already mention this matter before? Xiaohua was somewhat puzzled. After all, he had already mentioned this matter when he first came in. He didn't understand why Shui would bring it up again. He thought that Shui didn't believe him, so he roughly explained what he encountered in Misty Cloud's sect. Hearing that using a magic tool would also consume one's lifespan, Shui completely extinguished her thoughts and looked at the hall with some regret. Haha, it doesn't matter. Shui. Xiaohua said with a smile. If you want to go in, or if you want Ling Feiyun to go in, just tell your husband. You don't understand. Shui couldn't help but retort. However, she immediately forced a smile and said, Anne, I understand. I just thought of my uncle and brother and wanted to leave something for them. Anne, your husband understands. Xiaohua nodded. If there are any good things in the future, we will remember Misty Mountain. Okay, Shui was somewhat dispirited. She slightly nodded and said a few words to Xiaohua before flying out of the Thunder Palace. Shui originally thought that Xiaohua would be in seclusion for a few days. However, she didn't expect that in just half a day, Xiaohua would come out and call Shui to the underground Thunder Palace. He bitterly smiled and pointed to the last stone wall. Wife, this thunder refining technique is not complete. It only has the first half. If your husband's guess is correct, the second half should be in Luofeng Mountain. Haha, even if it's Luofeng Mountain, so what? Luofeng Mountain and my Misty Mountain are of the same origin. Shui smiled. Since last time Xiaohua acted ruthlessly, that place has already become Misty Mountain's territory. We can go there at any time. The time to ask for leave. Xiaohua hesitated. I haven't looked at the jade slip yet. I don't know how long it will take, but I'm afraid it won't be enough, right? Chapter 30-27. Hehe, now that the sect is in turmoil, you are definitely the focus of attention. If you don't go back, the masters of the Great Thunder Hall will be happy. Shui says smilingly, if you go back, it will instead be troublesome. But Xiaohua doesn't think so, shaking his head slightly. I am avoiding trouble, but what about the disciples of my 10,000 Thunder Valley? Eldest apprentice brother has always been weak, not good at fighting with others. Although junior apprentice brother Cui is good at socializing, unfortunately his mana is limited. Master is still in seclusion. We can't let Master's wife show herself in public, right? Hearing Xiaohua's responsible words, Shui smiled with gratification and said, let me think about it. Previously, I felt that there should be something in the Thunder Palace that I just found out about. It's just that the inside is too chaotic. Anne, I'll leave it to you. Xiaohua is overjoyed, walking to the 9 stone walls and examining them bit by bit. He doesn't have much time. It's best if he memorizes these lightning refining methods. After another half a day, he hears Shui's pleasantly surprised voice. Darling Xiao, quick, I remember, it's here. Xiaohua hastily flies to where Shui is standing. It's a stone wall that's exactly the same as the other 4. Shui points and says with a smile, I know that there is a passage here that can lead directly to the Lightning Palace of Flying Phoenix Ridge. But I don't know how to open the passage. Hehe, didn't I say so? Misty Mountain and Flying Phoenix Ridge are of the same origin. The underground palace must also be connected. Xiaohua chuckles, his whole body flickering with green light. Dots of green seal text appear, rushing towards the stone wall. When the green light on the stone wall flourishes, another thumb-sized green dot jumps out from the green light. This green dot seems to expand with the wind, becoming the size of a bowl in an instant. What kind of seal text is this? Xiaohua can clearly see that this bowl-sized green light is a seal text that he has never seen before. But before he can take a closer look, that seal text suddenly disintegrates, turning into 36 different seal text. These seal text emits a strange woo-woo sound, simultaneously starting to rotate. As the 36 green seal characters spun, a vortex appeared behind them. The vortex grew bigger and deeper, and in the time it took to brew a cup of tea, it formed a deep tunnel that was dozens of feet tall. Wonderful, Xiaohua sighed. He knew that the green seal script was a passageway that could even be transported. Unfortunately, he could only look at it and couldn't really touch it. Let's go. I'll go and see if that's the Flying Phoenix Ridge. Xiaohua looked at the already stabilized passage. The four walls of the passage were overflowing with green light, and countless tiny green seal characters were flickering within the green light. He smiled and pulled Shueishue's hand, and flew into the passage. The passage didn't look too long. Xiaohua and Shueishue only walked for a while before reaching the other end of the passage. As Xiaohua had expected, this place was also a huge space, just like the Thunder Palace. At a glance, Xiaohua saw the word lightning behind the huge stone chair, as well as the 9 stone walls opposite the huge stone chair. Is this the Lightning Palace? Is it under the palace of the Flying Phoenix Ridge? Shueishue looked at this space in disbelief, and then looked at the top of the space, and said curiously, the Flying Phoenix Ridge is very far from the Misty Mountain. Even if it's a teleportation formation, it needs to be under the pressure of teleportation. I've just walked such a short distance with my husband. The talismans of soul cultivators are not something you can imagine. Xiaohua naturally knew about the magic of the Million Meng Mountains, but he felt a little awkward when he had to really explain it. After all, he was a disciple of the Dao sect. In my heart, I've always thought that the Million Meng Mountain soul cultivators were uncivilized people, but I didn't expect. Shueishue was suddenly stunned. No matter if it was the Thunder Palace of the Misty Mountain or the Lightning Palace of the Flying Phoenix Ridge, they all seemed to be related to soul cultivators. If that was the case, wasn't her origin related to the Million Meng Mountains? Xiaohua naturally knew what Shueishue was thinking. Looking at Shueishue's pale face, he smiled and said, the Million Meng Mountains is definitely not something you can imagine. If there's a chance in the future, I'll take you to see it. I'll definitely change your mind. Hehe. Out of Xiaohua's expectation, Shueishue returned to normal in an instant. She smiled and said, I know. In the future, I'll follow my husband to the Meng Mountains to have a look. But then, Shueishue hurriedly urged Xiaohua, as for now, why don't my husband hurry up and comprehend these techniques? Okay. Xiaohua nodded. However, he was not in a hurry to practice the green seal characters. Instead, he first walked to the 9 stone walls and confirmed that the engravings on them were the latter half of the lightning refining technique. Only then did he feel relieved and walk to the side of the stone chair. He released his soul strands and touched the huge lightning character. Sure enough, this lightning was the same as the lightning in the Thunder Palace. It was also a talisman made up of 36 green seal characters, the lightning flashing technique. In an instant, whether it was Huanqi sky, Qingshan sky, or Mingrua sky, all of them were filled with lightning and thunder. Shueishue stood in the distance and looked at Xiaohua's body that was surrounded by lightning. That roar that came from the ancient times was faintly discernible in the lightning. This roar could not be heard, but Shueishue could clearly feel it in her heart. In addition to the majestic sound of thunder in the Thunder Palace, Shueishue could almost see Xiaohua using this lightning-flashing thunder-rolling talisman, divine ability. A thin and tall immortal flying high in the sky. His left palm roared with thunder, and his right hand controlled lightning. He moved through the clouds and created rain. He showed grace to the world, and his might shook the small fry. Wasn't this Taoist Xiao, who was worshipped by billions of people? Will I be able to see that day? Shueishue's nose turned sour, and tears unconsciously gushed out from her eyes. She hastily turned around and forcefully endured it. She looked at the 9 stone walls as if she was hiding something. Xiaohua did not know that Shui had lost control of her emotions. He was currently infatuated with the witchcraft incantation of the lightning flashing technique. From this witchcraft incantation, a feeling of controlling the world was born in his heart. A desire to trample all living things under his feet involuntarily grew. Roar! Xiaohua roared loudly. The thunder-rolling talisman that he had just learned was also released from his soul strands. For a moment, the lightning flashing and thunder rolling in the mysterious dark clouds once again appeared in the entire lightning palace. Another few days passed. After comprehending the profound mysteries of the lightning flashing technique, Xiaohua did not stop to rest. It was as if practicing the incantation would make him even more energetic, as if he would not be tired at all. Soon after, he walked to the 9 stone walls and carefully examined the second half of the lightning refining technique. Shui was originally worried, but when she saw Xiaohua's concentrated appearance, she knew that his cultivation was deeper than hers. In the field of refining, he was even more of an expert. If she said anything, she would only disturb Xiaohua. Thus, Shui sat there like a statue, like a still stone. Her gaze deeply stared at Xiaohua. She looked at his frown, looked at his joy, looked at his realization, and looked at his sigh. That expression of love seemed to have been here since the beginning of the world. Even if the world came to an end, this attachment would not fade. After comprehending a part, Xiaohua was suddenly startled. He turned his head to look at Shui and asked curiously, "Why do you keep staring at me?" "Because this concubine likes you, loves you, and wants to imprint your every move into this concubine's heart." Shui sweetly smiled and said with a slightly overbearing tone. Xiaohua smiled. Shui had not revealed such an unreasonable expression for a long time. These words seemed to make him think of the situation when he first met Shui in Yenyuan City. Time really flies. Moreover, the fate of this world is truly wonderful. Xiaohua sighed with emotion and once again immersed himself in comprehending. But right at this moment, Shui sighed and said, "Darling Xiao, how long will it take for you to comprehend this lightning refining technique?" "Right now. I'm afraid there isn't enough time. If you want to return to the sect before the day of leave." "This." Xiaohua smiled bitterly. "This is an ancient artifact refining technique. Although this husband already has some understanding of the Tao of artifact refining, if I want to comprehend this lightning refining technique, it won't be easy. As for the time, this husband can't say." Husband, you're still too kind." Shui sighed. "If it was another cultivator, I'm afraid they would have used their divine ability long ago. Not only would they have destroyed the 2 green seal characters, but they would also have taken away the 18 stone walls, right?" He. Xiaohua scratched his head and said embarrassedly, "To tell my wife the truth, this husband really did not think about this. This husband has always felt that this is the grace of the ancestors and does not belong to this husband. This husband is already satisfied to be able to take a peek at its wonders. How could I dare to destroy this treasure? Of course, this is my wife's inheritance, so this husband can't destroy it. Husband has already learned the 2 talismans. There's no need to say anything more." Shui stood up and said, "Since husband is unable to comprehend this lightning refining technique in a short time, then this wife will make the decision. You can take this lightning refining technique away. After you comprehend it, you can return it to this wife, okay?" This. Xiaohua rubbed his hands. Previously, he wanted to record it in a jade slip, but this lightning refining technique was an ancient language. There were some meanings that he did not know and still needed to ponder over. If there was a mistake in the record, wouldn't he regret it for the rest of his life? However, Shui's suggestion made Xiaohua, who had always pursued perfection, hesitate. He could secretly learn it, but he would not forcefully snatch it, let alone destroy it. "This husband will still." "Darling Xiao." Shui shook her head. "Didn't this wife already say it? You don't have much time. Without you, the myriad Thunder Valley might not be able to withstand the pressure of the other Thunder Palaces. Moreover, this wife needs to go into seclusion." "Ah, you still need to go into seclusion?" Xiaohua said curiously. "Yes. Didn't this wife tell you in the myriad Thunder Valley?" Shui forced a smile. "After this wife builds her foundation, she still needs to go into seclusion again. However, husband, this wife can guarantee that this will be the last time I go into seclusion." Oh, didn't you say? Xiaohua sat up to hear, then waved his hand and said, Forget it. This husband thought that what you said in the Myriad Thunder Valley was to make this husband take a leave of absence and hide. Seeing Xiaohua's displeasure, Shui said with a smile, This wife going into seclusion is a small matter. The safety of the Myriad Thunder Valley is a big matter. Letting Martial Uncle Zhua face the Thunder Palace alone, I'm afraid it's not good, right? Chapter 30:28. And I know. This is something I caused, so I have to take responsibility for it. Xiaohua narrowed his eyes. Human nature is to bully the weak and fear the strong. It's also the easiest to get jealous. I'm afraid that I performed too well in the Dao sword battle and allowed the Myriad Thunder Valley to obtain too much. Their eyes are red. As he spoke, Xiaohua slapped his hand. The nascent soul's hand rushed out of his forehead and grabbed the stone wall. With a loud rumble, countless lightning flashed and thunder rolled from the stone wall, trying to shatter the nascent soul's hand. Woo! The green light around Xiaohua flickered. The same lightning flashed and thunder rolled under the nascent soul's hand. It was the counterattack that hit the stone wall. The lightning flash and thunder roll technique was very strange. No matter if it was lightning or lightning, it was born out of thin air. There was no need for dark clouds to accompany it. Moreover, the size of the lightning was at will. Although Xiaohua was a beginner, he could barely control the lightning to not hit the words on the stone wall. As soon as Xiaohua's lightning flash and thunder roll came out, the lightning and thunder on the stone wall gradually disappeared and finally disappeared. Rise! Xiaohua roared. The entire lightning flash palace shook. The 10 zhang tall stone wall was pulled out from the ground by Xiaohua. After Xiaohua collected the 9 stone walls, he brought Shui back to the Thunder Roll Palace. Shui blinked her eyes and said with a smile, Husband, can you bring me to take a look? I still don't believe that this is the Flying Phoenix mountain range. Xiaohua was speechless. He really didn't understand why the female cultivator was so curious. However, after Shui pointed out the exit, he still brought Shui into the green seal words that gushed out like a fountain. Half a day later, Xiaohua and Shui flew out of the Fog Mountains formation. When they waved goodbye to Ling Zhengyi and Ling Feiyun, Shui still didn't dare to believe it. She said, Darling Xiao, that's only 100 zhang long passage. It actually leads to the Flying Phoenix mountain range? Is this soul cultivator's witchcraft so magical? My Dao sect has a teleportation formation, so soul cultivators naturally have. Oh, I really don't know the name of this witchcraft. There's nothing strange about it. Xiaohua smiled and pointed at Shui's head. When you absorb the soul cultivator's inheritance, you'll naturally know how powerful they are. But speaking up to here, Xiaohua pinched his chin with his hand and shook his head. However, there is still one thing that your husband doesn't understand. Oh, what's wrong? Shui was curious. Your soul imprint technique should belong to the Dao sect. This artifact should also belong to the Dao sect. Why did the soul imprint transform into something similar to the green seal text? Xiaohua explained, Furthermore, with my eyes, I don't think this is a soul cultivator's witchcraft. Furthermore, that sound. At this point Xiaohua frowned slightly. That was because the voice and the black shadow were very strange. Although the black shadow resembled a lightning beast, it was also different. That voice was even more subtle. In fact, Xiaohua found it somewhat familiar. It was actually somewhat similar to the voice Xiaohua heard when he shattered the nether passage mirror. However, one was a voice, while the other was a beast's cry. Xiaohua couldn't be sure. What's wrong with your voice? Shui didn't understand what Xiaohua was thinking and asked. Alas, there are too many secrets in this world. Xiaohua was helpless. He also didn't know how to explain. He simply explained what he encountered in the Hutu stronghold and spread out his hands. I'm afraid you will only know the truth after you comprehend this inheritance, right? Shui's face listened for a long time. Her small face was deathly pale at first, but then it slowly became rosy. Her eyes were somewhat blurred. Holding Xiaohua's hand was unexpectedly somewhat moist. She even asked in a low voice, Xiaohua, is there really a netherworld in this world? The netherworld sea you saw was really a sea of undead? It should be true. Xiaohua also didn't know. After all, it was the incarnation of the great god that the Hutu stronghold worships. Moreover, your husband has heard of a true great god's avatar. Then, if this concubine falls into the netherworld, will husband look for this concubine? Shui faintly asked. However, without waiting for Xiaohua to speak, Shui sweetly smiled and said, Hee, this concubine is speaking nonsense. Husband, don't think too much. Even if such a day really comes, this concubine will definitely not put husband in danger. Think about it, the netherworld is full of death. How can cultivators like us go in? Not to mention the Mahayana stage, even immortals wouldn't dare to rashly enter, right? This concubine still hopes that husband can live well, become famous in Xiaoyu continent, and give birth to 8 or 10 children with big sister Xianxia. Hee, my wife. What nonsense are you talking about? Xiaohua rejoiced that Shui didn't force him to state his position. The dangers of the netherworld were really as Shui said. Only the Almighty of the immortal world could enter, right? He was just a small cultivator of the mortal world. Not to mention that he was only at the Jindan stage. Even if he passed the tribulation, talking about the netherworld was purely a dream. He smiled and scratched Shui's nose. 8 or 10 children is what you want, right? Does my wife want to dual cultivate with this husband? Hee. Shui pursed her lips and smiled. You already did good things with big sister Xianxia. Why can't this concubine think about it? Okay, Xiaohua's heart swayed. He looked left and right, then called out, Then, don't. Shui's face turned red, and she hurriedly said, This concubine still needs to go into seclusion. When I come out, this concubine will send a message. You can ask Marshal Uncle Zhua to go to my Sunlei palace to propose marriage. At that time, Shui was abnormally shy, and she didn't say anything else. Okay. Xiaohua clapped his hands and said, How long will you be in seclusion this time? It won't be more than 2 years. Shui nodded with certainty. Hee. Xiaohua smiled. That's right, the great battle of Daowen's sword was probably going to have a clear ending. His nameless identity was probably going to be exposed. 2 years later, when Shui comes out of seclusion, wouldn't he be able to give her a pleasant surprise? Husband, your smile is so lascivious. Did you think of big sister Xianxia again? After saying that, Shui flew away like a wisp of smoke. This female cultivator. Xiaohua smiled bitterly and touched his nose, saying in a low voice, She seems to be far less pure than us male cultivators. Think. While chatting and laughing along the way, Xiaohua and Shui returned to the Imperial Thunder Sect. Before they landed on Sky Thunder Peak, they were discovered by some disciples on duty. But this time, the attitude of the disciples on duty was different. Other than the necessary respect and some worship that came from the bottom of their hearts, there were also some strange expressions. Xiaohua and Shui naturally noticed it very easily, but the two of them didn't pursue it. After Xiaohua sent Shui back to Sunlei Palace, he turned around and hurriedly flew to Myriad Thunder Valley. Xiaohua understood that something major must have happened in Myriad Thunder Valley. Otherwise, the disciples on duty wouldn't be so strange. Watching Xiaohua's thin and tall figure fly away, Shui quietly stood in midair and stared at him for a long time. Her tears flowed down her cheeks. Husband. Shui murmured, This parting is like being separated by life and death. When I look back, I'll remember all the love in my heart. No matter what cultivation level, no matter what realm, it can't compare to this concubine lying quietly by your side. If this concubine had a choice, this concubine would choose not to fall in love with you. If this concubine had any regrets, this concubine would regret meeting you. But the heavens gave this concubine this opportunity, letting this concubine fall in love with you, letting this concubine witness the growth of a hero. The heavens won't give this concubine the chance to choose or regret, so this concubine will never regret, nor will there be any other choice. Xiaohua, do you know? This concubine can't bear to leave you, but... At this moment, a pleasantly surprised voice sounded. Junior sister Shui, you're back? Xiaohua is also back? Shui wiped her tears and sniffed. Her entire face changed into a smile. She turned her head and smiled. So it's senior sister Shui. Xiaohua just returned to Myriad Thunder Valley. Why did he come back now? Why didn't he stay outside for a few more days? Shui said anxiously. Quick, junior sister Shui, quickly send a message. Tell him not to rush back to Myriad Thunder Valley. It's fine, senior sister Shui shook her head and said. No matter what happens, this little sister thinks that Xiaohua can handle it. Then, I'll accompany you to Myriad Thunder Valley. Shui hesitated and said anxiously. Right now, Xiaohua needs your support. No need. Shui shook her head. This little sister still needs to go into seclusion. You. Shui almost wanted to stomp her feet. At this time, why are you still in seclusion? Isn't Xiaohua's matter more important than seclusion? If senior sister Shui wants to go, then go by yourself. Shui said indifferently. This little sister still has more important things to do. Excuse me. Saying that, Shui turned and flew into Sun Lei Palace. Junior sister. Shui was a little embarrassed. She could have gone to Myriad Thunder Valley, but now that Shui said that, how could she go? Looking at Shui's expression, it was obvious that she was on guard against her. Having a good impression of him makes him an enemy? Shui smiled bitterly. I didn't do anything wrong either. But looking at Shui's disappearing figure and the direction of Myriad Thunder Valley, Shui finally turned back. Putting aside Xiaohua's flight to Myriad Thunder Valley and Shui's inexplicable seclusion again, in Twilight Tong City, in the bustling meeting hall, that was like a bird's nest, many Taoist sect cultivators' faces were pale as if they had lost their parents. No one knew if it was because of the fall of Sky Patrol City or because of the loss of their spirit stones. Some of them were roaring in excitement, but no one knew if it was because their relatives and old friends had fallen into the enemy's hands or because they felt bad about the Taoist sect's defeat. Some of them were biting their lips and whispering to their friends beside them. No one knew if they were concerned about the Taoist sect disciples who had fallen into Sky Patrol City or discussing the outcome of the Taoist Sword Great War. In short, almost all the cultivators gathered in front of the door of the first mystery of the Taoist Sword Great War, because perhaps in the next moment, the answer to the biggest mystery at the beginning of the Taoist Sword Great War would be revealed. Although everyone had the same thought in their hearts, they knew that the Taoist sect, which had never lost in the Taoist Sword Great War for tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of years, was really going to be defeated this time. But before the news came, everyone always had a trace of luck in their hearts. Perhaps, just like the Sword Tomb Great War, at the last moment, a mysterious John Doe would turn the situation around. Chapter 30-29. Outside the Sky Patrol City, John Doe, whom many cultivators in Tongmu City were hoping for, would not be there. None of the nascent soul cultivators here believed in John Doe. Even all the cultivators from the Three Kingdoms were hoping for John Doe's appearance. At this time, all the participating nascent soul cultivators had left their resting places. Under Sun Yunzi's command, they were scattered thousands of miles away from the Sky Patrol City. Not only the nascent soul cultivators, but all the Foundation establishment cultivators and above were also mobilized. More than 10 days ago, they had been divided into groups according to their respective sects and even into small teams. Around the Sky Patrol City, the disciples who had been flying around in the air for more than 100 days to set up the formation had disappeared. The disciples who attacked the Sky Patrol City from time to distract the sword cultivators had also disappeared. A silent, solemn, suffocating, and even deathly aura permeated every inch of space within 1,000 miles of the Sky Patrol City. There was no need for the Dao sect to issue any challenge talismans. Any sword cultivator could smell the smoke of the final battle in the air. The smoke was on the verge of exploding. Naturally, the sword cultivators had already found something amiss from the cultivators' attempts to cover it up. Chong Taishu and the others also sent all the sword cultivators in the Sky Patrol City to various parts of the sword formation to strengthen the power of the sword formation. As for Hua Jian and the other cultivators, they had already stayed up all night to wait for the Dao sect's attack at the key points of the sword formation. That's strange. Sun Yunzi was in the Great Formation. He looked at the silent Sky Patrol City and was puzzled. He whispered, "Aren't the sword cultivators too confident now? Do they think that a sword formation alone can block our Dao sect's attack? Don't they know that the strongest defense is offense? Or do they already have a countermeasure? However, our Dao sect's Great Formation has sealed off thousands of miles around the Sky Patrol City. Even the original teleportation formation in the Sky Patrol City has been cut off. What are they waiting for?" Huan country's reinforcements? It seems that the disciples sent to intercept them did not send any special messages. Just as Sun Yunzi was thinking, a message talisman flew into his hand. Sun Yunzi took it and looked at it for a moment. He then stared at the Sky Patrol city in the distance for more than half a cup of tea. His eyes narrowed slightly and flashed with determination. He said to the message talisman, "Junior brother Xianjing, we can start now. Our Dao sect's final battle against the sword cultivators will begin immediately." As soon as he finished speaking, Sun Yunzi flicked his hand, and the transmission talisman transformed into a flowing light that vanished. "Rise!" Not long after, Xianjing shouted from afar, and the order in his hand soared into the sky. The resounding sound of the bugle horn resounded throughout the heavens and the earth. Looking at the decree again, it was divided into 3 layers, like a flower blooming in mid-air. Layers of brilliance were constantly peeled off, illuminating the entire horizon. Buzz! An inexplicable trembling sound was heard along with the trembling of the earth. The rhythm of the trembling was rather slow, but the range of the trembling was extremely wide. All the snow-capped peaks within 1,000 miles of Sky Patrol City were shaking left and right. Not only were the accumulated snow shaken off, but even the solid ice was also cracking and falling off piece by piece. In the Sky Patrol City, Chong Taishu and the others hurriedly activated their swords and rushed into the air. They had seen many formations in the Path Sect, but they had never seen a formation that caused such a huge commotion before it even appeared. Although they were well prepared, they still panicked at the sight of such a formation. Other than Sun Yunzi, Immortal Lu Shi and the others also stood calmly in mid-air. Although they did not say anything, their eyes were filled with anticipation. The violent trembling not only shook the earth, but also the air. The Foundation Establishment cultivators could not stand in mid-air at all, and the Golden Core cultivators could barely fly. If such a formation could not shake the Green Light Sword formation of the Sky Patrol City, the Path Sect would really have to admit defeat. Whoosh! After the strong trembling, a milky white brilliance that was hundreds of miles long emerged from the ground from the east of the Sky Patrol City like a huge circular fan and rushed into the air extremely slowly. With the emergence of this brilliance, a hurricane suddenly arose in the east of the Sky Patrol City. The gloomy icy rain suddenly stopped, and the dense clouds in the sky above the icy rain disappeared quickly as if they were blown away by the hurricane. The shadow of a setting sun appeared in the sky. The rays of sunlight fell from the sky and shone on one side of the Sky Patrol City's Green Light Sword formation. When the rays of sunlight touched the milky white brilliance, they were immediately refracted and produced many lotuses. These lotuses were like fine beads and raindrops, and as the milky white brilliance gradually rose, they sprinkled over the left side of the Sky Patrol City. On the small lotuses, the leaves spread and withered, and the flowers bloomed and withered. Very faint shadows were produced. There were mountains, rivers, flowers, trees, people, and buildings in the shadows. It was as if small worlds were being born and destroyed one after another. As the shadows played on the brilliance that was hundreds of miles long, an indescribable beautiful music was produced, and it completely covered the east of the Sky Patrol City. What kind of formation is this? It can actually trigger a celestial phenomenon. Chong Taishu was a little dumbfounded. He could not imagine what he was seeing. He really did not understand why this so-called formation was so fake. Sword Master Chong, that's only half of the formation. Look over there. Blue Butterfly was also surprised. She hurriedly pointed to the west of the Sky Patrol City and shouted at Chong Taishu. When Chong Taishu looked to the west, there was also a pitch-black light that was hundreds of miles long slowly emerging from the ground, baring its fangs and brandishing its claws. Naturally, a hurricane was also blowing in the west of the Sky Patrol City. However, this hurricane was so cold that when the ice rain touched the hurricane, it immediately turned into a string of ice dregs and was instantly blown into powder by the hurricane. Correspondingly, the red clouds in the sky were now dyed black, as if endless ink had been splashed across the western horizon. Not to mention sunlight, even the slightest bit of brilliance was blown away by the hurricane and swallowed by the pitch-black brilliance. Although this was opposite to the light in the east, there should not be any light here. However, the strange thing was that above the pitch-black brilliance, there were also wisps of light. Within the light, there were also thousands of images. However, these images were either ghosts, underworld beasts, mountains collapsing, volcanoes erupting, ghosts wailing and wolves howling, or crying to the heavens and the earth. Above the brilliance in the west in the sky, as the brilliance moved inch by inch, the space collapsed little by little. As this collapsed, a faint mournful melody was also heard, surrounding the west of the Sky Patrol City. Kacha, at the north and south of the Sky Patrol City, where the black and white brilliances intersected, countless heavenly thunderbolts as thick as a child's arm blasted out violently. The heavenly thunderbolts seemed to be endless like dancing dragons and snakes. Following the strange phenomenon of the heavenly thunderbolts, a powerful force was born from the grayish-black edge. This force was like a powerful palm, tearing everything around the edge into pieces. A small snowy peak was at the corner of the edge. However, in the time it took to drink a cup of tea, the snow was blown away, the ice layer was cracked, the frozen soil was lifted, and the boulders were torn apart. In the end, half of the foothills were lifted, and the entire snowy peak collapsed with a rumble. Sword Masters. At this time, Chong Taishu was calm. He slowly looked around and laughed. This is the final struggle of the Taoist sect cultivators. It's just as we expected. Looking at the power of the magic formation, I'm afraid they've thrown all their disciples into this magic formation. As long as we persevere through this magic formation, the Sky Patrol City will belong to the Sword Domain. We'll have achieved our first great victory in the Taoist Sword War. Everyone, what are you waiting for? Activate the sword origin in your body, and let the Sword Domain sword formation produce a brilliant sword light. Let the sword light split the Taoist sect's arrogance, split the Taoist sect's territory, and create a new world for the Sword Domain. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Countless sword lights rushed out, and countless sword cries resounded. The entire Tiani green light sword formation suddenly shone with a brilliant green light. The green light rose higher and neared, forcing the so-called celestial formation, the heaven and earth dual elements demon ceiling formation. The Tiani green light sword formation stood still like a mountain, while the heaven and earth dual elements demon ceiling formation surged like a tidal wave. The black and white light divided the entire Sky Patrol City into two different purgatories of life and death. The heaven and earth demon ceiling formation seemed to be rising very slowly, but this slowness revealed its indestructibility. The cyan light, which was heavier than a mountain, rushed into the white light and the black light countless times, but there was no effect. Instead, no matter how the cyan light came into contact with the white light or the black light, it was instantly sucked in and disappeared without a trace. A few more layers of shadows appeared on the black and white light. Seeing that the cyan light of the Tiani cyan light sword formation could not suppress the black and white brilliance of the heaven and earth demon ceiling formation, and that the black and white brilliance had already exceeded the understanding of the sword masters, Chong Taishu and the others' lofty aspirations were somewhat shaken. Left sword master. Chong Taishu muttered to himself, the Tai cyan light sword in your hand is made of primordial gold qi, and it's the toughest and sharpest weapon in the world. Zhuo Ming narrowed his eyes. Sword light overflowed from his body. He raised his hand and the Tiani green light sword appeared out of thin air. Then, Zhuo Ming transformed into a sword and rushed into the Tiani green light sword formation. Let's see the power of this magic formation. Seeing that Zhuo Ming had left, Chong Taishu and the others stopped in the sword formation and watched quietly. Zhuo Ming transformed into a sword and flew out of the sword formation like a lone star. He was dragging a green flying sword behind him. Buzz! As soon as Zhuo Ming flew out of the sword formation, he immediately sensed the suffocating and terrifying aura in the sky. This aura was very strange. It was serene and violent at the same time. Between this serene and violent aura, a feeling that could make one's heart shatter involuntarily arose. It was as if two completely different beliefs were constantly changing Zhuo Ming's thoughts at an unparalleled speed. Chapter 30:30. Zhuo Ming was horrified and did not dare to show his body. He could only vaguely see his figure in the giant's sword. Zhuo Ming raised his hand slightly and the green light trailing behind the giant's sword soared into the sky. The Tai green light sword, which was even larger than the giant's sword, immediately turned into a green rainbow as Zhuo Ming waved his arm and slashed at the dark brilliance. Hiss, hiss, hiss. The Tai green light sword cut through the air and made a sharp sound. The entire Tiani green light sword formation swayed along with the Tai green light sword. Wisps of green light uncontrollably rushed into the rainbow. Although the demon ceiling formation of heaven and earth was set up far away from the Sky Patrol City, the rainbow formed by the Tai green light sword ignored the distance and landed in the sky above the dark brilliance in the blink of an eye. Boom boom. The tiny green light sword shone brightly and the green light pierced into the dark sky like an inch of light. It was more dazzling than lightning. The sound of the sword had now turned into thunder, echoing the thunder from the north and south. As the tiny green light sword slashed into the dark brilliance, it blasted into the sky in the west. Swoosh! The green light flashed and a ray of light that was several miles long was emitted from the sky in the west. Not only did it split the dark sky, but it also cut into the dark brilliance with incomparable sharpness. The brilliance did not seem to have any resistance. It split into two and sank deep into the ground. The green light was like jade, and it was very eye-catching in the dark brilliance. Ha 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 ha, it's just so. Chong Taishu could not help but laugh when he saw that the tiny green light sword was so sharp and that the demon-sealing formation of heaven and earth did not have any resistance. In particular, there was no extremely powerful attack method that he had imagined. However, before he could finish laughing, he heard a loud roar coming from the east where the white brilliance was. Rays of dazzling white light shot up into the sky and rushed into the intersection between the north and south sides of the gray light. This. Chong Taishu's attention was naturally attracted by the commotion in the east, but he did not quite understand why the east would react when Ming attacked the west. When Chong Taishu's gaze landed on the west side again, he couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. He saw that in the slender crack that had been split open by the tiny azure radiance sword, the black fog was flourishing. It quickly devoured the green light that lingered around the crack. It seemed that the fierce battle result of the tiny azure radiance sword just now was about to disappear. Swordmaster Chong, what kind of formation did the Dao sect set up? Cheng Minghua felt his scalp go numb. He asked in a low voice, this formation hasn't been set up yet, and its attack method hasn't been revealed yet. Yet, it can easily block the attack of the tiny azure light sword. If it's set up, how powerful would it be? Dao sect, it really is the Dao sect. Chong Taishu narrowed his eyes. Seeing that Zhuo Ming did not dare to delay, he turned into a sword and flew back. He said in a low voice, their techniques are really endless. The most important thing right now is to prevent the Dao sect from completing this formation. Blue Butterfly said hurriedly, we should use the 5 azure light swords to destroy this damned formation. If one tiny azure radiant sword can't break this formation, then 5 azure light swords won't be able to. Chong Taishu shook his head slightly. If we want to break this formation, we can only use the power of the entire Tianyi Azure Radiant Sword Formation and the power of hundreds of thousands of sword cultivators. Then hurry up. Blue Butterfly was a little anxious. Once the formation is set up, even if we attack with all our strength, we won't be able to break it. Don't worry. Chong Taishu said mysteriously. This formation is a little different from my sword formation. When the formation is first set up, its defensive effect is extremely strong. It can be said that all of its magic power is used to prevent us from breaking it. However, when the formation is first set up, it's the moment when the formation switches from defense to offense. That's the weakest point of the formation. The formation's defense is at its lowest point, and its offensive power has just been generated. The entire formation's defense is probably less than 30% of its current power. That's why I asked Sword Master Zhua to try this formation. When the time comes, the 5 flying swords of my sword realm will be able to break it. Don't forget that we only revealed 3 azure light swords at most. The other 2 azure light swords are unknown to the cultivators of the Dao sect. Cheng Minghua couldn't help but say, Sword Master Chong, I agree with your idea. However, when the mysterious spirit design switches between attack and defense, we won't be able to break it. The spirit design is closed. Look at the spirit design's current aura. This is a spirit design that can trigger astronomical phenomena. If the spirit design attacks, the power is definitely not something we can withstand. We will definitely be consigned to eternal damnation. In my opinion, we've already won a great victory. Everything in Sky Patrol City is in our hands. With the 5 azure light swords, we'll definitely be able to break out of this formation. It's better to quit while we're ahead. Sigh, Sword Master Cheng. Do you think I'm unwilling? Chong Taishu sighed and lifted his eyes to look at the faintly discernible Sky Patrol City under the green light sword array. He said, for so many years, the many swordsmen of the Great Sword Domain have never won a battle against the Dao sect. They have always been defeated time and time again. Now that we've obtained Miss Jiu Xiao's brilliant plan, We finally have the 5 azure light swords that have never been refined. The victory of this first Dao sword battle is within our reach. Besides, we've spent so much effort to persuade them, but we're still far from revealing our final trump card. How can we lose? Also, we still have the disciples of the Imperial Thunder Sect and Mo Sang Mountain. Even if our azure light sword formation is destroyed by this mysterious formation, we still have something to rely on and can escape. Isn't victory beckoning to my sword domain for all these reasons? Don't tell me. Sword Master Cheng doesn't want to leave your name in the history of the sword realm? It seems like there hasn't been such a good opportunity since ancient times. When he heard about leaving his name in the history of the sword realm, Chang Minghua's eyes flashed. That's right. Since ancient times, the sword realm had countless transformed swords and spirit swords. However, how many swordsmen remembered them? The sword Dao battle had always been a place where swordsmen fought enthusiastically. It was also a place where they could prove their strength. Obtaining the first victory in the Dao sword battle would probably be remembered by others no matter how many years passed. The bright sword sect would also be remembered by many sword sects in the sword realm. All right, Cheng Minghua gritted his teeth and nodded fiercely. I'll go all out today. I'll bet my life with Sword Master Cheng this once. Haha, Sword Master Cheng, you worry too much. Cheng Taishu laughed. The Dao sect's cultivators are betting. They're betting with the lives of the disciples of the Imperial Thunder Sect and Mo Sang Mountain. Why would my Sword Realm's disciples bet with their lives? I can confidently tell Sword Master that with them, this mysterious formation, even if it's an immortal formation, will definitely not be able to stop us from escaping. Hiss! Chang Minghua sucked in a breath of cold air. Rolling his eyes, he said in a low voice. Are they that powerful? I can't tell. Hee, you and I are well aware of it. Cheng Taishu laughed. This matter cannot be considered. Back then when the Valley Master of the Swarm of Monkeys Valley, Chi Peng, spoke of this matter, I thought that the kid was spouting nonsense. However, when I investigated, I couldn't find out anything about that person at all. It seems that he has cultivated for even longer than me and the others. Otherwise, how can I address them as seniors? Then, didn't they already reach the spirit sword realm? If they were to make a move, how could those old farts of the Dao sect let it go? Chang Minghua clearly didn't understand the details and hurriedly asked. That's where it's amazing. Cheng Taishu clapped. Do you think they're at the spirit sword realm or divine sword realm? Cheng Minghua shook his head slightly. I can't sense their cultivation, but once in a while, I can feel that they're at the second grade of the sword transformation realm. That's right. Cheng Taishu said. That's their real cultivation. Then, Cheng Minghua still wanted to ask more questions. At this moment, Zhuo Ming had already turned around. The flickering sword light had already disappeared, revealing Zhuo Ming's frightened expression. How was it? Cheng Taishu's heart thumped. He left Cheng Minghua and hurriedly flew over to ask. Sword Master Cheng. Zhuo Ming's face was still filled with lingering fear. He looked to his left and said in a low voice, This array is very strange. It's far from the Dao sect's array that we've seen before. I didn't dare to reveal my physical body in that array. I could only rely on the sword body to resist the two desires of life and death. Well, it can be said that this array's attack method is somewhat similar to a soul array. Of course, the power inside is also terrifying. The spiraling hurricane not only swept away all the spiritual chi of heaven and earth, but also tore my sword body. If an illusory swordsman were to enter, he would definitely be torn to pieces. So powerful. Cheng Taishu was a little dumbfounded. In his expectations, this array should be mainly for defense. How could it have an attack method? When I turned around just now, I already understood. Zhuo Ming said again, if we want to break the array, I'm afraid we have to use all 5 green light swords. The 2 green light swords stare at the 2 black and white lights from the east and west. The 2 green light swords tear the intersection of the north and south, so that the 2 wings of the array cannot be connected. The last green light sword can really break the array. If we can't break the array with this plan, we can only abandon the city and escape. Actually, we have other plans. Then, Cheng Taishu repeated what he had just said to Zhuo Ming. Just as Cheng Taishu thought, although Zhuo Ming knew the power of this mysterious array, the temptation of leaving his name in the history of swords was too great. Zhou Ming only hesitated for a moment before nodding. Since Zhou Ming, who had tested the mysterious array, had no objections, the others naturally had no objections. Hence, all the swordsmen in the sword region activated the sword origin in their bodies and waited quietly for the moment when the Heaven and Earth Devil Sealing Array closed to launch the most powerful attack. The black and white brilliance of the Heaven and Earth Devil Sealing Array was still rising in an orderly manner. Now, it had covered the Tianyi green light sword array. Since it had already passed, under the command of Xianxia and Zhenren Pin Xian, the black and white brilliance surrounded the center of Sky Patrol City. Chapter 30-31. Standing beside Xianxia and Reverend Pin Xian were Sun Yunzi and Reverend Lu Su respectively. After staying in the formation for a while, they couldn't help but fly to the side of the two who were setting up the formation. The two late nascent soul stage cultivators were also very nervous at this time because this universal demon sealing formation was the most powerful formation that the Taoist cultivators could use now. If this formation didn't work, the Taoist cultivators could only use the stupidest method, to surround but not attack. If that was the case, the reputation of the Three Kingdoms would be even more shameful than a direct defeat. Therefore, the two sect leaders with the highest cultivation had to each choose a formation to set up the formation with Xianxia and Reverend Pin Xian to fight. Going into battle with bare arms, this was exactly what Chong Taishu said. The most critical moment had come. Just now, the style of Zhou Ming's sword really made Sun Yunzi's heart skip a beat. That was hundreds of miles away. Sun Yunzi admitted that his magic treasure didn't have such great power. Even if he used a secret technique and used his nascent soul to drive the magic treasure, it was impossible to hit the universal demon sealing formation from hundreds of miles away and tear such a big and deep crack in the formation. However, the universal demon sealing formation wasn't called an immortal formation for nothing. Not only was the heavenly power of the formation dazzling, but its self-recovery ability was also amazing. Zhou Ming's Tianyi green light sword could only break the surface of the formation and didn't touch the real formation base at all. Since Zhou Ming had ascertained the power of the Yin-Yang Heaven and Earth Demon Sealing Formation, Sun Yunzi thought that the next step would be the three green light swords. They would attack with all their might before the Yin-Yang Heaven and Earth Demon Sealing Formation was sealed. However, what made Sun Yunzi worried was that the three green light swords that he envied still didn't appear even when the black and white brilliance of the Universal Demon Sealing Formation overflowed the green light formation. Even a third-grade sword transformation swordsman didn't show his face. Good. Sun Yunzi almost clapped his hands. He really didn't understand why the sword cultivators didn't attack. At this time, the Universal Demon Sealing Formation had just been activated. Whether it was Xianxia, Reverend Pin Xian, or the disciples of Immortal Music Sect and Immortal Ascension Sect, they weren't familiar with it. Although the sword didn't hit the formation base just now, hundreds of disciples were injured and dozens of disciples died. The heavens are protecting our Dao sect. Zhenren Pin Xian seemed to have realized something and whispered a few words to Sun Yunzi, which was similar to what Chong Taishu thought. Ha ha ha, Sun Yunzi laughed loudly. The strongest attack is defense. Even this old man is convinced by these words. I really didn't expect to hit the nail on the head. This Yinkuan Yin-Yang Demon Sealing Formation itself is a kind of seal. Taoist Pin Xian explains in a low voice. It is an extremely powerful sealing technique used by immortals. But when it came to my Daybreak continent, it was treated as a magic array. How could there be a switch between offense and defense in the seal? After a while, when the seal is complete, I want to see what kind of waves these three flying swords can cause. Actually, the most important thing is, Reverend Me, you and the others. Sun Yunzi said worriedly. If they hadn't fallen into the Sky Patrol City, would we be in such a passive position now? The opportunity is fleeting and the situation of the battle changes rapidly. Of course, when Imperial Thunder Sect and Mo Sang Mountain entered the Sky Patrol City, who would have thought this day would come? Taoist Pin Xian said faintly. Sometimes, it's not impossible to make necessary sacrifices. Sun Yunzi glanced at Taoist Pin Xian and said faintly. It's easy to say but hard to do. Imperial Thunder Sect's Chen Lei Zi is easy to deal with. His cultivation is only at the mid-nascent soul stage. Even if he is at the late-nascent soul stage, he is still new and won't say much. In particular, Imperial Thunder Sect has always boasted of being a big sect and acts with the demeanor of a big sect. If we use the righteousness of the Dao sect, they might be able to accept it. But Mo Sang Mountain's Elder Mo Sang is not so easy to deal with. I can say for sure that Elder Mo Sang must be sharpening his blade. Once something happens to Mo Sang Mountain's disciples, he will be the first to find us. When Taoist Pin Xian heard this, he immediately shut up. Elder Mo Sang was a late nascent soul stage cultivator and was famous in the country of Xi. Although Mo Sang Mountain wasn't as famous as Xianxia sect and wasn't even as big as Imperial Thunder sect, who would dare to bully Mo Sang Mountain's disciples? Not to mention throwing two early nascent soul stage cultivators into Sky Patrol City. While the two were talking, the two black and white lights were like a curtain of light. One went from east to west and the other went from west to east. They began to gradually close in the center of Sky Patrol City. The heavenly lightning in the north and south also soared into the 9 heavens like a soaring dragon. Ka-cha-cha, just when the brilliance was only about 300 meters away, a thunderous roar resounded through the entire sky. After the thunder, it was suddenly quiet. There was no sound in the sky at all. Only after the lightning disappeared did traces of gray spread rapidly from the north and south like a gust of wind. Ayo! Not good. Chong Taishu and the others saw this and immediately shouted. Was there anything else to say? The so-called change of attack and defense seemed to have started early when the formation was set up. Wasn't this gray light the main color of the formation that was about to change? Quick! Chong Taishu's body emitted a strong sword cry. The sword light soared into the sky. His entire body gradually turned into a sword and rushed out of the sky. One azure light sword formation. The supreme azure light sword in his hand was shining with cold light. When Chong Taishu moved, Zhua Ming, Cheng Minghua, Rua Tian, and Qilian Dai also moved at the same time. The other 4 azure light swords also swung out. 5 green light swords rushed out from the green light that was originally pulsating like breathing. These 5 green light swords bared their fangs and brandished their claws as they flew around one another, forming a huge fried dough twist. The originally dead silence in the sky was instantly filled with intense whistles, ear-piercing sword cries, and all sorts of strange noises. This sword cultivator is really cunning. There are actually 5 azure light swords in the formation. Sun Yunzi raised his eyebrows and said excitedly, Quickly close the formation. What's the use of 5 azure light swords at this time? After receiving Sun Yunzi's urging, Taoist Pin Xian rubbed his hands together. Bursts of thunderbolts were emitted. Waves of strange techniques rushed into the white brilliance below him. The ripple-like brilliance rushed up to the 9 heavens in a moment. The black and white brilliance didn't wait for the 5 green light swords to approach and immediately collided with each other. Boom! A powerful airwave with a mysterious fluctuation was born from the contact of the black and white brilliance. The entire space within 1,000 miles shook rapidly. A kind of silent suffocation fell from the sky and rushed into the body and soul of all the cultivators and swordsmen. Whoa! A gust of wind whistled from the top of the formation, and a thumb-sized gray light spot that was brighter than the stars was born. After that, the gray light spot began to spin rapidly. Strands of black and white light followed the rotation and came down like a wheel. Oh no! Ruatian of the Matian sword sect, who held the Supreme Harmony Azure Light Sword, suddenly realized at this moment. He looked at the black and white wheel that was rapidly turning gray and said anxiously, This isn't an offensive sword formation. This seems to be a kind of seal. Who cares if it's a seal or a formation? This is the time. Chong Taishu was also shocked. However, he had no choice but to release the arrow. He could only shout loudly. The 5 intertwined green light swords suddenly retracted their brilliance in mid-air, as if they had lost their sword chi. Then, the Tai green light sword began to flash with green light, followed by the Tai Ching green light sword, the Supreme Micro green light sword, the Supreme Harmony green light sword, and finally the Taishan green light sword. Each of them flashed with green light, as if they were all heartbeats. After the first round of flashes, the second round of flashes took its place. The flashes became faster and faster, and finally, like the first full moon, with a loud roar, the 5 azure light swords actually turned into a huge azure dragon and rushed towards the gray spot in the center of the heaven and earth devil ceiling formation. The sword chi was also majestic and did not seem to be much inferior to the devil ceiling formation. Boom! With a sound that sounded like the collapse of heaven and earth, the whole world was shaken by this collision. Huge waves of chi reverberated in the entire space along with the shock wave. Whether it was the intense shaking of the Heaven and Earth Devil Ceiling Formation's brilliance or the Tiani Azure Light Sword Formation's green light, all the practitioners and swordsmen could not stand still in the air. They all fell down awkwardly and covered their ears with their hands in extreme shock. The practitioner's protective golden light was torn apart by this impact, and the swordsman's protective sword light was also torn apart by this impact. This kind of earth-shattering destruction wreaked havoc in the space within 1,000 miles. Looking at the place where the huge azure dragon hit the Heaven and Earth Devil Ceiling Formation, the azure light endlessly rushed into the gray brilliance, and hair-thin cracks rapidly extended in all directions along with the impact. The gray seal showed signs of collapsing under the azure light sword. However, the gray was rotating, and the black and white colors were constantly fusing within it. Although there were many cracks and although they were dense, they could not be stopped from being repaired in this rotation. Moreover, in that rotation, the black and white colors became less and less while the gray colors became more and more numerous. It seemed that the sword practitioner's attacks could not stop the formation from repairing. The Heaven and Earth Devil Ceiling Formation's name as an immortal formation was not just for show. Wah! The sword cry that sounded like a dragon's roar was now even louder. Endless azure light rushed out of the Tiani Azure Light Sword Formation and flew into the dragon tail behind the azure dragon. As a result, the cracks became bigger and the number of fine cracks increased. Kacha! Suddenly, when Sun Yunzi and Reverend Lu Shi smiled, and when Chong Taishu and the others' hearts were burning with anxiety, discordant cracking sounds came from the Heaven and Earth Devil Ceiling Formation, which had already been repaired by 40%. At this critical moment, the Heaven and Earth Devil Ceiling Formation actually showed a flaw. Chapter 30-32. Not good. Reverend Pin Xian scanned with his divine sense and immediately turned pale with fright. The Yang Qi of Xian Le Sex Formation is too strong. It can't balance with the Yin Qi of the Immortal Ascension Sex Formation. The whole formation may collapse. How is this possible? Sun Yunzi was also shocked. Senior brother Sun Yunzi. Reverend Pin Xian smiled bitterly. This seal was originally cast by the Immortal alone. If two cultivators of the Immortal Ascension sect and Xian Le sect on the Xiaoyu continent used it together, and if their cultivations were the same, it would be easy to balance. But now hundreds of thousands of disciples are activating it at the same time, and the formations of these two sects have been modified differently. It's not easy to merge them. Forget it. Sun Yunzi snorted. Naturally. He knew the helplessness in this. As he rubbed his hands, the golden light around him shone brightly. Incantations rushed into the formation, and his figure slowly rose into the air. On the opposite side, Reverend Lu Ni's figure also appeared. She also activated all her magic power and tried her best to support the whole formation. Sure enough, with the full effort of two late nascent soul stage cultivators, the collapse of the whole Heaven and Earth Dual Elements Demon Ceiling Formation actually stopped. It gradually reached balance, but the formation that was supposed to be mended also stopped. In the whole formation, the top 40% had turned gray, and the east and west sides were still black and white. But it was only this 40% gray that firmly imprisoned the whole Tiani Cyan Light Sword Formation. The 5 Cyan Light Swords were captured by the formation, and were in an extremely delicate balance. Sun Yunzi and Reverend Lu Ni did not dare to withdraw their magic power. If they did, it would immediately affect the balance of Yin and Yang in the Heaven and Earth Dual Elements Demon Ceiling Formation. Not to mention the collapse of the formation, the 5 Cyan Light Swords would inevitably break out of the formation. As for Chong Taishu, Cheng Minghua, Chilean Butterfly, Zhou Ming and Rua Tian, the 5 of them did not dare to withdraw their magic power. At this time, their 5 Cyan Light Swords had turned into one. If anyone withdrew their magic power, the entire Cyan Light Swords would collapse. Not only would the Tiani Cyan Light Sword Formation disappear, but the 40% of the seal's power would also fall and completely cover the Sky Patrol City. Although it was only 40%, Chong Taishu and the others had no doubt that this seal would seal all the swordsmen. In the blink of an eye, after the Yin-Yang Devil Sealing Grand Formation fell into dead silence, the entire sky within 1,000 miles became deathly silent once more. Regardless of whether it was a swordsman or a cultivator, they were all in a state of absolute equilibrium. No one dared to make a move. Ha ha ha! Suddenly, a loud laugh resounded through the sky. Chong Taishu's physical body appeared under the azure light sword that was like a jade pillar supporting the sky. He said, "Old Devil Xuanyun, long time no see." Who would have thought that after fighting for so many years without seeing you with my own eyes, I would actually see you here today? Chong Taishu's physical body was formed by the sword light. Under the green light sword, it emitted a dazzling green light, reaching a height of several hundred feet. Although the virtual body flickered from time to time, the sword force inside was very threatening. His voice could be heard from several hundred miles away. He was truly like a deity. Humph, Chong Taishu, why are you suddenly befriending him? Sun Yunzi naturally couldn't show weakness. Golden light flashed around his body, and a virtual body flew out from his physical body. It stood in the air with its hands behind its back and said coldly. Sun Yunzi's virtual body was different from Chong Taishu's sword shadow. Although it was also several hundred feet tall and wasn't inferior to Chong Taishu's, the virtual body wasn't a straight light shadow. Instead, it was strands of golden light mixed with black and white. The virtual body twisted from time to time, as if it was standing in the void. However, Sun Yunzi's voice also filled the heavens and the earth, and his momentum was close to Chong Taishu's. Good boy, congratulations! Seeing that Sun Yunzi's virtual body wasn't inferior to his at all, Chong Taishu was shocked. He cupped his hands and said, "There's actually a secret technique that can activate the divine clone. It seems like you're about to break through the shackles of the late nascent soul stage." Hee, old devil Chong, aren't you the same? With this spiritual body, it's only a matter of time before you advance to the spiritual sword stage, right? Sun Yunzi replied indifferently. Yes, you and I are both successful in our cultivation. However, if we're not careful today, we might die. No matter who it is. Isn't it a pity? Chong Taishu seemed to be sighing. Sun Yunzi sneered. If that's the case, why did you do it in the first place? If you sword cultivators didn't attack the 3 kingdoms of cultivation, would there be such a war? This war doesn't seem to be something that only the sword region needs, right? Chong Taishu also replied with a double meaning. The Great Dao Sword War has been going on for more than 10 years now. What's the use of saying so much? Sun Yunzi ignored Chong Taishu's words and asked in return, "Don't tell me you want to talk about the world with me now." Of course not. Chong Taishu smiled and said, "I want to negotiate with you now to see how we can solve the current predicament." Sun Yunzi looked up at the great formation that was like a gray cloud and the green light that was like a pillar that supported the heavens. He sneered and said, "Sky Patrol City is within the territory of the country of Xi. The current stalemate is to the advantage of the Dao sect. Let's not talk about 1 day or 10 days. Even if it's 100 or 1,000 days, the disciples of the Dao sect will come after receiving the news. Do you think the sword cultivators of the Huan Kingdom have a chance of winning? Bullying the weak with numbers has always been the Dao sect's specialty. Do you feel proud of this victory?" Chong Taishu also mocked. Besides, without the barrier of the sword tomb, the warriors of the sword region can still provide reinforcements. Besides, the sword tomb has already ambushed 1,000,000 swordsmen. I only need to hold on for another 10 days, and they'll definitely come here. 1,000,000 swordsmen, you scared me to death. Sun Yunzi sneered. Unless you don't want the territory of the Huan Kingdom anymore and let the 1,000,000 soul cultivators of the Meng Mountain kill their way into the Huan Kingdom. Yes, the Huan Kingdom is bitter and cold. What's so good about it? We've long wanted to establish the sword region in the Xi Kingdom. Chong Taishu nodded. Sun Yunzi's expression changed, and he said sternly, "Old geezer Chong, if you say so, then I won't talk to you anymore." So you want to negotiate with me? Chong Taishu changed the topic and said with a smile. Nonsense. Sun Yunzi sneered. Look at how fearless you are. Do you think I don't know what you're thinking? You're talking nonsense. Aren't you just trying to use the Imperial Thunder Sect to make a deal with the disciples of the Mo Sang Mountain? Ha, Chong Taishu laughed. Old geezer Sun Yunzi, when did you become so straightforward? I feel that you've almost caught up to the character of a sword cultivator. Yes, my Dao sect is straightforward now, but you sword cultivators are dawdling. After talking for so long, you still don't know what you want to say? Sun Yunzi retorted. All right, Chong Taishu smiled. I'll be honest. It's not that I'm trying to change the topic, but I really don't know how to solve the current predicament. Look, most of the nascent soul cultivators of your Dao sect are controlling this formation. Neither you nor Reverend Lu Mang can escape from it, And most of the swordsmen of our sword realm have been trapped in the sword formation of our sword cultivators. I and a few sword masters of the third tier of sword transformation realm are controlling the 5 green light swords and are unable to escape. How can we determine the victor of the Dao sword war under such circumstances? How could they minimize the number of casualties? I'm a bit exhausted. Old geezer Chong, what kind of sword formation is this? What's with the 5 azure light swords? Sun Yunzi asked hesitantly. What is this mysterious yin-yang formation of yours? Chong Taishu asked back. This formation of mine is the yin-yang devil sealing formation of heaven and earth. Sun Yunzi wasn't afraid that Chong Taishu wouldn't tell him and simply explained. Sure enough, Chong Taishu didn't hide anything. He also broke down the Heaven 1 Azure Light Sword formation and explained the origin of the 5 Azure Light Swords. Damn it, Sun Yunzi couldn't help but curse. The sword cultivators of your Huan country are really scheming. They've long planned this out. Hee hee, if it weren't for someone causing trouble, I'm afraid you would have already been defeated. Chong Taishu laughed. Who? Sun Yunzi asked vigilantly. Who? Why should I tell you? Chong Taishu's curiosity was piqued and he didn't say anything. If you don't tell me, I'll know in the future. Sun Yunzi didn't ask any more. He understood that since Chong Taishu mentioned it, he would definitely explain in the future. It's a pity that my sword domain's painstaking arrangement was blocked by this immortal world's formation in the end. Chong Taishu laughed bitterly. Then the heavens will bless my Dao sect. Sun Yunzi laughed loudly. How about this? Why don't we all withdraw our respective sword formations? You and I will fight each other. If you win, it'll be your Dao sect's victory. If I win, it'll be my sword domain's victory. How about it? Chong Taishu suddenly said when he saw Sun Yunzi laughing loudly. Humph, Sun Yunzi snorted coldly. My Dao sect's sealing formation is outside. Your sword cultivator's formation is inside. Who will withdraw first? Naturally, it'll be the sealing formation outside. Why isn't it the sword formation inside? Sun Yunzi sneered. So before the outcome is decided, who dares to withdraw the formation first? You don't dare to withdraw the formation. Chong Taishu mocked. You don't dare to fight with me. You and I have already fought hundreds of years ago. What result can there be now? Sun Yunzi shook his head. Chong Taishu said proudly, although we were tied at that time, it's different now. I'm a 3rd grade transformation sword. Compared to your late-stage nascent soul cultivation, my attack power is half a level higher. If you fight with me, your chance of winning is less than 40%. Moreover, I have the Supreme Light Sword. Your soul-stealing chain bell won't be able to withstand a single blow from me. Therefore, your chance of winning is reduced by 20%. If you bet the outcome of the Dao sword battle on your less than 20% chance of winning, you dare. Others don't dare. Sun Yunzi's expression changed slightly. What Chong Taishu said was true. He really didn't dare to bet with him. If he fought with his life on the line with Chong Taishu, Sun Yunzi might not be afraid. It was just a battle of life and death. Even if Sun Yunzi lost to Chong Taishu, he still had the confidence to escape from the Supreme Light Sword. At most, he would abandon his physical body and use his nascent soul to teleport. However, if the responsibility of the Dao sword battle was placed on this bet, Sun Yunzi didn't have the confidence to win against Chong Taishu. Even if Sun Yunzi had the confidence, the implications of this bet were too great. If he made a mistake, he would be condemned for eternity. Sun Yunzi didn't dare. Chapter 30-33. Hee hee, Sun Yunzi sneered as he looked at the 5 azure light swords. Your supreme azure light swords are probably different from ordinary flying swords, right? If I'm not wrong, they must have a way to kill nascent soul cultivators. Sun Yunzi's words were rather off-topic, as if he was trying to change the topic. However, Chong Taishu's shadow paused for a moment as if he was hesitating. After a moment, Chong Taishu said faintly, "This is a secret of my sword domain. Do you think I'll tell you? If you have the guts, you can come and try. If you don't, then there's no need to talk about it." Sun Yunzi smiled. "If it's a fight, why would I be afraid of you? Even if your innate azure light swords can split the heavens and earth, my head will definitely stick out before the heavens and earth. However, this is a great battle between Tao and sword. My life and death will determine the victory of my Tao sect. I clearly know that your innate azure light swords are tailor-made for nascent soul cultivators like me. There's no reason for me to fall into your trap. Chong Taishu laughed. Since you can see it clearly, I won't hide it from you. I'll be frank with you. If you Tao sect cultivators are pierced by my innate azure light swords, not to mention your physical body, even nascent soul cultivators won't be able to escape. This old man wants to see if you all have the guts to do so. Let's see if you dare to fight against my innate azure light swords. I do have the guts, but I don't have to be loyal to my friends. Sun Yunzi was calm. How can I fall into your trap? Old geezer Sun Yunzi, this won't do, that won't do. Why don't you tell me why? Chong Taishu looked helpless and said coldly, don't waste time here. If I have the time, I want to order my disciples in Sky Patrol City to kill a few more cultivators. If you dare. Sun Yunzi didn't show any weakness. If you dare to kill a disciple from Imperial Thunder Sect or Mo Sang Mountain, my Tao sect will dare to kill 10 sword cultivators from Huan Country. If you kill the disciples from both sects, then your Huan Country's sword cultivators can just wait to disappear from Dawn Rain Continent. Ha ha ha, Chong Taishu laughed loudly, and the shadow gradually disappeared. Let's wait and see. Seeing Chong Taishu leave and his shadow fuse into the towering azure dragon light, Sun Yunzi let out a sigh. The light and shadow gradually dissipated. Now, it was really hard to stop halfway. Sun Yunzi had no choice but to discuss with Reverend Lu and I. After 1 hour, Sun Yunzi's shadow reappeared. Obviously, this shadow was a bit dimmer than the first time. Apparently, Sun Yunzi and Reverend Lu Shi were having a hard time maintaining the universal devil ceiling formation. Old Man Cho, Sun Yunzi's several hundred feet tall figure slightly distorted as he spoke faintly. His voice rushed towards sky-supporting pillar, whose green light had already become somewhat restrained. Whoosh! A sword light flashed on the green dragon-shaped sword pillar, and a sword shadow rushed out. It slowly flashed, and Chong Taishu's figure also appeared. Just like Sun Yunzi, the sword shadow was also dark. Old Sun Yunzi, do you understand now? Do you want to fight me? Old Chong, that's obviously a cliff. How can this old man jump down with his eyes closed? Sun Yunzi seemed to have a card up his sleeve as he replied calmly. Then why are you looking for me? Chong Taishu asked curiously. The swordsmen of my sword region have already decided to fight to the death with your Tao sect. Let's see which immortal formation is more powerful, or my sword region's sword formation. As he spoke, Chong Taishu was about to leave, playing hard to get. Wait. Sun Yunzi waved his hand and said. Old Man Chong, don't be impatient. How can your sword formation compare to my Tao sect's immortal formation? However, for the lives of the Imperial Thunder Sect and Mo Sang Mountain's disciples, this old man will still accept your bet on behalf of my Tao sect. Chong Taishu's swaying figure stopped, and he asked curiously, Old Man Sun Yunzi, didn't you say you didn't agree to the bet with me? Listen carefully. Sun Yunzi laughed. This old man agreed to the bet, but not the other way around. Haha, Old Man Sun Yunzi. You really know how to trick people. Even if you didn't agree to the bet with me, the other third-grade swordmasters are all supporting the sword formation. Who would agree to the bet with you? Chong Taishu laughed. Why don't we remove the sword formation, and you can choose any swordmaster of my sword region. The Yin-Yang Devil Ceiling formation will definitely not be removed before the victor is decided. Sun Yunzi waved his hand and said. Moreover, after the victor is decided, before the disciples of our two sects come out, it will definitely not be removed. Humph. Chong Taishu snorted coldly. You Tao sect cultivators can go and daydream together. How can there be so many advantages in this world that your Tao sect can monopolize? As he spoke, Chong Taishu's illusory figure completely dispersed, transforming into tens of thousands of sword lights that were about to charge into the green light sword pillar. Old Man Chong. Sun Yunzi was furious. This old man hasn't even finished speaking, and you want to leave? Since that's the case, then my Tao sect will no longer make a bet with your Huan country. Let's see what happens in the end. Hee hee. Those tens of thousands of sword lights spiraled in the air and converged into Chong Taishu's illusory figure again. He said indifferently, "The bet may be allowed, but the disciples of the Imperial Thunder Sect and Mo Sang Mountain can only be released after the Yin Yang Devil Sealing formation is removed." Sun Yunzi hesitated slightly before nodding. "That's fine." When the bet spreads throughout the entire Dawn Rain continent, this old man won't be afraid that your Huan country swordsmen will go back on their word. "Very good." Chong Taishu's figure flashed. "This sword wants to hear how your Dao sect wants to bet?" "Very simple." Sun Yunzi pointed with his hand. "Your Huan country's third-grade swordsmen need to maintain the sword formation, while my late-stage nascent soul cultivators need to maintain the formation. There's no need for them to participate in this bet. They only need second-grade swordsmen and mid-stage nascent soul cultivators to participate in the bet. Our 3 cultivation countries, Shi country, Lian country, and Meng country will each send 3 sects to participate in a total of 9 rounds. Your Huan country will also send swordsmen to participate in 9 rounds. Whoever wins 5 rounds first will win this Dao Sword Great War." 9 rounds? Chong Taishu chuckled and shook his head. "My sword region's swordsmen can't compare to your 3 cultivation countries in terms of numbers. If I count with my fingers, I'm afraid you don't have 9 second-grade swordsmen. This sword definitely won't agree to this. If you don't have second-grade swordsmen, first-grade swordsmen are fine too." Sun Yunzi smiled. "Your Huan country's first-grade swordsman's attack power is comparable to my mid-stage nascent soul cultivators. They can also participate in the fight." Chong Taishu didn't mind Sun Yunzi's mockery. He thought for a moment and said, "Your Dao sect's third-grade swordsmen and late-stage nascent soul cultivators won't participate. I'll agree on behalf of Sword Region. As for the rest, this sword will return and discuss it." After speaking, Chong Taishu didn't wait for Sun Yunzi to speak and transformed into a sword and flew back. Hee. Sun Yunzi looked at the thousands of sword lights like birds returning to their nest and sneered in his heart. He understood that the number of third-grade swordsmen participating in the battle in Huan country far exceeded the number of late-stage nascent soul cultivators on his side. Although these third-grade swordsmen were supporting the sword formation, if any one of them were to come out, an ordinary late-stage nascent soul cultivator wouldn't be able to resist. On his side, there were only 2 late-stage nascent soul cultivators, Lu Ni and himself. At this time, they couldn't gamble. Just by Chong Taishu agreeing to the first condition, the Dao sect had an additional 10% chance of winning the battle. However, Sun Yunzi was also clear that the individual battle power of a sword cultivator was really outstanding. Even if Chong Taishu agreed to this condition, the Dao sect still wouldn't have the confidence to win. However, as matters stood, the Dao sect was also forced to walk on the path of no return. They could only gamble. Looking at the flashing sword lights in the gray and black intertwined sky, Sun Yunzi sighed. "Sigh, if both sides don't hold back, the Immortal formation will backfire and this heavenly azure light sword formation will collapse. I'm afraid all the swordsmen and cultivators won't be able to survive. The Immortal formation is indeed powerful, but the price to control it is also not cheap." After the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, Chong Taishu appeared once again. As expected, Chong Taishu once again raised a different opinion. "What? Only 3 rounds? The country of Shi, the country of Meng and the country of Lian will only send 1 cultivation sect to participate in the battle?" Sun Yunzi pretended to be astonished and said, "How can such an important battle be decided after only 3 rounds?" "Old Sun Yunzi, aren't you asking the obvious?" Chong Taishu said coldly, "The number of swordsmen in my sword domain is already less than the number of cultivators in your Dao sect. If there are more rounds, your Dao sect will naturally have the advantage. Since you aren't willing to fight with me to decide the victor, then I naturally won't agree to your 9 rounds of battle? How about 5 rounds? Sun Yunzi asked. That's not right. 3 rounds will do. Chong Taishu didn't give in. My sword domain now has a higher chance of winning than the Dao sect. The battle is already a little unfair. How can there be another 5 rounds of battle? All right. Sun Yunzi nodded. If that's the case, then let's strike our palms and make an oath. The sword cultivators of the Huan country and the 3 nations of the Dao sect will have 3 rounds of battle to decide the victor. The country of Shi, the country of Lian and the country of Meng will each send out 1 sect. Your Huan country will also send out 3 swordsmen to fight against the middle-stage nascent soul cultivators of my 3 sects. All right. My sword domain will send out 3 warriors to fight against the cultivators of your 3 sects. Chong Taishu nodded as well. A sword gleam transformed into a palm that was dozens of feet large and slowly swept across the sky. A powerful sword will swept across hundreds of miles and rushed towards Sun Yunzi. Huff, Sun Yunzi didn't show any signs of weakness. His palm of the same size flashed with black and white and mixed with golden light as it rushed into the sky. All the spiritual energy within 100 miles froze. Boo! An extremely loud sound came from the sky. The 2 huge palms collided together and countless small hurricanes were created. The entire world shook. When the thousands of sword gleams turned into fireflies and the thousands of lights turned into flowing lights, the 2 palms disappeared under the sky. Hee, old man Sun Yunzi, your cultivation is only though. Chong Taishu said coldly. You too. Sun Yunzi replied calmly. You didn't exceed my expectations. In an hour, we will send out our disciples for the first round of battle. Chong Taishu didn't reply and flew away. Chapter 30-34. Phew! Seeing that Chong Taishu had left, Sun Yunzi let out a sigh of relief. Golden light flashed around him as he entered the formation. Damn it! Sun Yunzi's phantom image returned to his physical body, and he quickly rubbed his hands. Waves of light once again fell into the yin-yang devil ceiling formation. He cursed in a low voice. I borrowed the power of the Immortal formation, but I was only able to fight evenly with Chong Taishu. If it was a real battle, it would be hard to say. This sword cultivator is truly powerful. Senior brother Sun Yun, Reverend Pin Xian's figure appeared beside Sun Yunzi and said in a low voice, even if it's 3 rounds, it's hard to say for my Dao sect. Go ask Zhu Chenghe and the others. They are cunning people. See how the sword cultivators will deal with this. Sun Yunzi instructed, and then quietly said a few words. Spiritual Master Pin Xian was clearly stunned. Immediately, joy appeared on his face. If that's the case, my Dao sect will definitely win this match. After that, if the 4 strategists can arrange their troops well, our Dao sect will definitely win. Yes, it's rare for me to take advantage of a loophole like Chong Taishu. I can't let this loophole fail. Sun Yunzi said with a smile. Let those little kids pay more attention. They had performed well earlier, but in the end, they had fallen into the sword cultivator's trap. This time, we have to let them grasp this opportunity well. 30 minutes later, a cultivator with white hair and a youthful face, dressed in a white Taoist robe, flew out from behind the white light. Then, he turned into a rainbow and rushed toward the green light sword array of Sky Patrol City. This cultivator was the sect leader of Meng country's Tai Ching sect, Daoist Yuqing. After Daoist Yuqing, Zhu Chenghe's figure also appeared. In front of him was Sun Yunzi. Zhu Chenghe respectfully said to Sun Yunzi, Martial uncle. In the Meng kingdom, there were only Immortal Yuqing, the head of the Tai Ching sect, and Yun Mengzi, the head of the Changbai sect. In the Lian kingdom, there were only Immortal He Ping, the head of the Utopia sect, and Xian Jing, the head of the Kunlun sect. Needless to say, Xian Jing was in charge of the Heaven and Earth Demon Ceiling formation, so he could not participate in the battle. Only these 3 seniors could participate in 2 of the rounds. Yun Mengzi's attack power should be stronger than the other 2 seniors. However, since he was going to gamble with a sword cultivator, there was no need to mention his attack power. As for Reverend Yu Qing and Reverend He Ping, they are both masters who are half a step away from the late nascent soul stage. Both their magic power and experience are extremely powerful. Sun Yunzi nodded faintly. However, when it comes to steadiness and longevity of cultivation methods, the Tai Ching sect is still the best. The foundation of the Utopia faction is still inferior to that of the Tai Ching faction. That's right. Junior doesn't dare to talk about senior's cultivation. This is what Reverend He Ping said himself. Zhu Chenghe said in a low voice, the 3 sects of Tai Ching sect, Heaven, Earth, and Man all have unique secret techniques. In fact, each of the 3 sects has strength that is not inferior to a cultivation sect. As the leader of the 3 sects, Daoist Jade Pure's cultivation was needless to say. Junior and the others have also discussed this matter. We are afraid that the sword cultivators will create some kind of first round. They will send a swordsman who has just stepped into the second grade of the sword transformation realm to fight against the strongest cultivator of our Dao sect. However, when he thought of the backup plan that his martial uncle had mentioned, he simply placed Daoist Yuqing in the first round. Even against the weakest opponent, if our Dao sect wins the first round, we will definitely win the second round. In that case, there is no need for Reverend He Ping from the Utopia faction to fight again. Good. Sun Yunzi nodded. In this battle, the sword cultivators of the Huan Kingdom have used all their means. This time, I want to see what other backup plans they have. Even if it is a swordsman of the second grade of the sword transformation realm against Daoist Yuqing, it will not be easy for him to win, right? Exactly. Zhu Chenghe said with a smile. The key is that Martial Uncle's second round is indeed beyond our expectations. Even the sword cultivators of the Huan Kingdom have not figured it out until now, right? Alas! Sun Yunzi sighed. If it wasn't for the victory of our Dao sect, I wouldn't have done this. Martial Uncle, this is for the greater good. It is incomparable. Zhu Chenghe said anxiously. When our Dao sect wins, others will know of Martial Uncle's painstaking efforts. Forget it, forget it. Who cares about what others say? Sun Yunzi waved his hand. Let's see who Daoist Yuqing's opponent is. From what I know, the swordsman of the second grade of the sword transformation realm in the Huan Kingdom. Which sect is this swordsman from? Sun Yunzi looked at the distant horizon and was stunned. He could now see the situation within 1,000 miles with the help of the Yin-Yang Demon Sealing Formation, but Zhu Chenghe could not. It was a little strange. Look. This swordsman is a little strange. Sun Yunzi pondered for a moment and waved his hand. A mirror that was several feet in size appeared in front of Zhu Chenghe. Under the gray sky, Daoist Yuqing stood quietly with his hands folded in his sleeves at a distance of more than 100 miles away from the green sword pillar. Opposite him, a golden human figure flew out from the Sky Patrol City, which was shrouded in green light. The golden light of the human figure was so dazzling that it covered the person's entire body. It was impossible to see who it was. Zhu Chenghe was also stunned and did not dare to say anything. The human figure landed in the air a few miles away from Daoist Yuqing. The dazzling golden light did not dissipate. Under the gray sky, it was extremely dazzling, like a scorching noon sun. Ha ha ha, Chong Taishu's voice appeared from the green sword pillar again. He laughed and said, so it's Daoist Yuqing from the Tai Ching sect. It's a pleasure to meet you. Swordmaster Cho, Daoist Yuqing stood there calmly and said indifferently, I'm a mid-stage nascent soul cultivator. I meet the conditions for our battle. But why doesn't the swordsman of the Huan Kingdom reveal himself? Ha ha ha, Chong Taishu laughed. Since we're here for a battle, we naturally have to reveal ourselves. Otherwise, how can we let you Dao sect cultivators know the cultivation of the warriors of the sword domain? Daoist Soaring Dragon, please temporarily disperse the light protecting you. Humph! With a cold snort, the golden light around the swordsman called Daoist Soaring Dragon slowly faded, revealing a tall and thin human figure. Daoist Soaring Dragon? Not only was Daoist Yuqing stunned, but Sun Yunzi and the others were also stunned. A weapon cultivator. Seeing Daoist Soaring Dragon's bony face and exposed hands without any muscles, only a seemingly sharp luster, and especially the reddish-yellow eyes in Daoist Soaring Dragon's eyes, Zhu Chenghe cried out in shock. That's right. I have fallen into Chong Taishu's trap. Sun Yunzi sighed. I've never heard of a weapon cultivator or bird cultivator who could cultivate to the sword transformation realm. Now that a weapon cultivator has appeared, it seems that Daoist Yuqing won't be able to win. Ai, that's right. Zhu Chenghe was also somewhat dejected. I originally wanted to rely on Martial Uncle Yuqing's cultivation to block the attack of the sword transformation realm cultivator, then think of a way to defeat the sword cultivator. But who would have thought that the sword cultivator would send out a weapon cultivator? Although a weapon cultivator's attack power can't compare to a sword cultivator's, but they've fused with their weapons. It's too difficult to defeat them. Not necessarily. Sun Yunzi seemed to have thought of something. Looking at the mirror, he said indifferently, Tai Ching sect is a sect with an inheritance. If I'm not wrong, Daoist Yuqing should have brought over a spiritual weapon of his Tai Ching sect. Relying on this spiritual weapon, Yuqing can at least maintain an undefeated position. Spiritual weapon? Xianxia was slightly stunned and said curiously, "This spiritual weapon of Tai Ching sect, this junior, seems to have never heard of it." "There are many things that you haven't heard of," Sun Yunzi said indifferently. "I might as well reveal to you. If there's a sect that has a spiritual weapon, other than Lian country's Kunlun sect, it would be your Meng country's Tai Ching sect. Don't underestimate them." "Yes, Junior thanks Martial Uncle for the reminder." Xianxia was shocked and hurriedly bowed. He knew that this was Sun Yunzi's good intentions. Sun Yunzi ignored Xianxia and looked at the distant horizon. At this moment, Taoist Yuqing looked thoughtfully at Taoist Soaring Dragon and said calmly, "Looking at your Taoist robe, you seem to be a cultivator of my Tao sect. Why did you go to Hung country?" This old man was originally a rogue cultivator of Meng country. Taoist Soaring Dragon did not try to hide anything. He said in a slightly hoarse voice, "When I was cultivating in Meng Kingdom, I was never welcomed by the big sects like yours. Even after this old man obtained a magic weapon, I was chased by people." "Say, if this old man did not escape to the sword domain, wouldn't I have become a ghost under the blade of your Tao sect? How could I extinguish the ferocity of your Tao sect here? Even if some Tao sect cultivators forget righteousness for the sake of profit and want to frame you. But after all, you are of my Tao sect. You are still in Meng country. This is righteousness. How can you abandon righteousness and help the evildoers?" Taoist Yuqing advised. "Bullshit. This old man is now a weapon cultivator. Entering the Tao with weapons is also something that your Tao sect has always despised. How can you put the hat of righteousness on this old man's head today?" Taoist Soaring Dragon rolled his red and yellow eyes and said coldly, "Instead of talking about righteousness with this old man, why don't you first tell the thousands of cultivators in the Cultivation 3 countries about the dangers of killing and robbing? Although Taoist is a weapon cultivator, you are wearing a Taoist robe and your name is Taoist. Doesn't that mean that you are still thinking of the Tao sect?" Taoist Yuqing did not know how to deal with this grade 2 sword transformation realm weapon cultivator that he had never seen before and could only delay. This old man is also called Soaring Dragon. Could it be that this old man is a flood dragon? Taoist Soaring Dragon did not care and pointed at Chong Taishu and said, "Sword Master Chong, your surname is also Chong. It seems that there is also a family with the surname Chong in Shi country. Could it be that he is also a Tao sect cultivator?" "Ha ha ha," Chong Taishu laughed and said, "Taoist Soaring Dragon, don't listen to Taoist Yuqing's nonsense. He is just guilty and does not dare to bet with you." Immediately after, Chong Taishu raised his voice and said, "Old Devil Sun Yun, does my sword domain's first swordsman meet the conditions that we agreed on earlier?" Sun Yunzi's image appeared from the array and said faintly, "This Taoist Soaring Dragon is indeed a grade 2 sword transformation realm cultivator and did not exceed the rules that we set. However, he is a weapon cultivator and not a swordsman." Chapter 30-35. Think about it. When did I say that only swordsmen can be used? I was talking about warriors. You were the one who said swordsman, right? Chong Taishu smiled and said indifferently, "Besides, in my sword realm, no matter if it's a weapon cultivator, a bird cultivator, or a beast cultivator, they can all be called swordsmen. Even if I sent out a beast cultivator now, it would still meet the requirements." "Humph, you took advantage of the loophole." Sun Yunzi waved his hand and said, "Since you said so, I can't do anything. These are the titles of sword cultivators in your country." After saying that, Sun Yunzi's figure disappeared and ignored Chong Taishu. Taoist Soaring Dragon. "I'll have to trouble you for this battle." Only now did Chong Taishu's words have some respect. This respect was not something that a third-grade swordmaster should have. "Yes, I know." Taoist Soaring Dragon nodded slightly. When Chong Taishu's sword shadow disappeared, the golden light around him flashed again and covered his figure. "Good, since it's like this, let me see what kind of amazing methods you, a second-grade weapon cultivator, have." Seeing that Taoist Soaring Dragon had concealed himself, Taoist Yuqing knew that Taoist Soaring Dragon had begun to attack. He quickly slapped his hand and took out a green silk ribbon that was 1 foot long from his storage pouch. He tossed it into the air and an emerald green light was emitted from the ribbon. "Haha, It's indeed the Tai Ching sect's spirit weapon, Heaven-Binding Lock. Seeing the silk ribbon fly out, Sun Yunzi, who was hidden in the formation, could not help but laugh softly. Taoist Yuqing still brought it out. Heaven-Binding Lock. Zhu Chenghe looked at the exceptionally clear silk ribbon in the mirror and muttered, "It can even bind the sky, this weapon cultivator. I'm afraid it'll be difficult for him to escape capture." Taoist Soaring Dragon's figure was hidden in the golden light, so his expression could not be seen clearly. However, the strange thing was that Taoist Soaring Dragon just stood there without moving, as if he did not care about Taoist Yuqing's spirit weapon. Moreover, the spirit tool did not seem to have any effect on Taoist Master Soaring Dragon's golden light. Qi Zhenren Yuqing did not dare to be careless. He chanted a mantra and pointed his finger. A strange spell was cast, and the mana in his body surged. The Taoist robe on his body fluttered even though there was no wind. The heaven-binding chains, with the infusion of Zhenren Yuqing's mana, suddenly expanded and emitted a strong clear light. This clear light was like water, rippling under the sky at an extreme speed. In an instant, it covered the space within a few hundred miles. The spiritual qi of heaven and earth within 1,000 miles was completely absorbed by this clear light, and the space within a few hundred miles was filled with an indescribable confinement. It was as if every inch of the space was a lock, and these locks were intertwined together to form a huge lock. And the source of this enormous lock was the heaven-binding chains that were several tens of meters long. Wang, Taoist Yuqing, who had activated the heaven-binding chains, slapped his forehead with his hand. That same huge clear light transformed into the shape of a big hand and rushed into the air. Woo! The big hand let out a whimper as it grabbed onto the heaven-binding chains that were several tens of meters long and slightly swung. With this swing, the entire space within a few hundred miles shook, as if it was shaken by the heaven-binding chains. It swept towards Taoist Master Soaring Dragon's golden humanoid figure. Contrary to everyone's expectations, Taoist Master Soaring Dragon did not transform in time, nor did he enlarge his figure. He only stood there quietly. Within a few hundred miles around him, millions of small locks transformed into endless green waves and rushed towards him from all directions. Strange! Seeing Taoist Master Soaring Dragon's silence, Sun Yunzi was puzzled. He understood that even if it was him, under the bindings of the heaven-binding chains, he would have to use a lot of mana to escape. And this old tool cultivator actually did not move at all. An ominous feeling immediately arose in Sun Yunzi's heart. Sun Yunzi definitely did not believe that Chong Taishu would give up the first battle like Zhu Chenghe and the others thought. Sure enough, just as the huge heaven-binding chains rushed towards Taoist Master Soaring Dragon, the golden light around Taoist Master Soaring Dragon's body trembled violently and emitted a bright brilliance. Then, an extremely loud dragon roar came from within the golden light. The golden humanoid figure quickly transformed, and a dragon-shaped scissors that were 3 meters long appeared in the air. The scissors were a bit strange, as there was only half of it. However, this half of the scissors transformed into the shape of a dragon. The dragon's tail quickly swayed, and a golden light flashed. It was even more dazzling than the sunlight that pierced through the dark clouds, and even faster than the meteors that streaked across the night sky. A golden crack that spanned several hundred miles flashed out of the heaven-binding chains. Ah! Taoist Yuqing exclaimed in disbelief. What happened? Sun Yunzi was shocked. The moment the golden light flashed, a deathly stillness and an unstoppable sharpness involuntarily appeared in Sun Yunzi's eyes. Even with his cultivation, he could not clearly see how Taoist Master Soaring Dragon's magic treasure cut through the heaven-binding chains. When Sun Yunzi looked at Taoist Yuqing, he could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. He saw that Taoist Yuqing's nascent soul hand had already been cut in half by the golden light. There was also a deep crack on the heaven-binding chains in his hand. As for the heaven-binding chains that had just formed, it had already collapsed under the golden light. The backlash from the imprisonment caused the heaven-binding chains to tremble violently. Not only that, the right hand that Taoist Yuqing used to slap his forehead was also chopped off. It floated right below the nascent soul hand. Taoist Yuqing stared blankly at the hand. It was as if even he did not dare to believe it, or perhaps he himself did not clearly see how Taoist Master Soaring Dragon chopped off his hand. Defeated! Defeated! Sun Yunzi could not help but shout in his heart. This This tool cultivator's cultivation is only at the second grade of the sword transformation realm. How can he be so powerful? This old man understands. It's the magic treasure that fused into Taoist Master Soaring Dragon's body. This magic treasure is too powerful. But at this moment, even if Sun Yunzi understood, what could he do? In the first round of the Tao Cultivator duel, Taoist Yu Qing was clearly no match for the powerful Taoist Master Soaring Dragon. Sigh. Sun Yunzi sighed and was about to turn into a shadow and admit defeat. But at this moment, an extremely powerful restriction that was even more powerful than the heaven-binding chain slowly spread out with Taoist Yu Qing as the center. This restriction contained a heavenly might and a ruthlessness that cultivators could not resist. Late-stage nascent soul realm. Sun Yunzi was really wild with joy. Looking at the origin of the heavenly might, Taoist Yu Qing put his right hand into his robe and formed an obscure seal with his left hand. From his forehead, he took off a spirit talisman that flashed with lightning and looked like a pool of clear water. Following the removal of the talisman, the space within a few hundred miles, which was originally under the control of the heavenly might, was once again filled with an extremely valiant coercion. This coercion was the coercion of Taoist Master Yu Qing when he advanced into the late nascent soul stage. Now that it was accompanied by the heavenly might, it was truly 10 times harder than a rock, filling up the entire space. There were even specks of colorful light that appeared from the void and turned into streams that floated towards Taoist Yu Qing. Tai Ching's soul-stabilizing talisman. Sun Yunzi was ecstatic, but there was a hint of bitterness as he whispered. With this, although Taoist Yu Qing entered the late stage of the nascent soul realm 100 years later than me, if he wants to enter the spirit-severing stage, he will have 30% more confidence than me. Martial uncle. Zhu Chenghe was dumbfounded by what he saw. After hearing what Sun Yunzi said, he hurriedly asked, "This Tai Ching spirit-stabilizing talisman, is it similar to the Yun Qing talisman at the peak of Qi refinement?" Sigh, not bad. Sun Yunzi looked at the vortex above Taoist Yu Qing's head in the distance. Thousands of spirit lights gathered like fireflies and he sighed. The Tai Ching soul-stabilizing talisman is a great secret passed down by the Tai Ching sect. It is used to help nascent soul cultivators advance. Its function is similar to the Yun Qing talisman and the Yun Qing talisman. When a nascent soul cultivator's cultivation is at the early or middle stage of the nascent soul realm, they will gain more insights and experience more tempering. When their cultivation and magic power reach a level where the talisman is unable to restrain them, then the talisman will be removed. The so-called bottleneck of the late stage of the nascent soul realm will be broken through in the torrent of magic power. Hiss. Zhu Chenghe took a deep breath and his eyes were filled with envy and jealousy just like Sun Yunzi's. Before Taoist Yu Qing removed the talisman, he was a mid-stage nascent soul realm cultivator and met the conditions for the bet. Now that he has advanced to the late stage of the nascent soul realm, it doesn't violate the conditions we agreed on with the sword cultivator. It might be difficult for a cultivator who has just entered the late stage of the nascent soul realm to kill Taoist Teng Jiao, but it should be more than enough to defeat him. Sun Yunzi quickly hid his expression and said, even if Taoist Yu Qing needs time to advance to the late stage of the nascent soul realm, it will be easy for him to defeat Taoist Teng Jiao with the flood of magic power he has tempered for 100 years. This battle. My Tao sect has won. Prepare for the second battle. Yes, Junior will arrange it now. Zhu Chenghe smiled. Since my Tao sect has won the first battle, there is no need to talk about the second battle. Sun Yunzi nodded, but just as Zhu Chenghe was about to turn around, an even more dazzling golden light flashed through the air. Ah! Zhu Chenghe was shocked. Not good. Sun Yunzi also lost his voice. In the air, Taoist Yu Qing's body swelled like a balloon and the light rushed into his forehead. The pressure of the late stage of the nascent soul realm and the heavenly might of his cultivation realm suppressed Taoist Teng Jiao. The dragon-shaped Teng Jiao Shear's golden light disappeared. Humph! Taoist Master Yu Qing coldly snorted. The heaven-binding shackles that had just been cut open suddenly emitted a clear light that was like water. This clear light followed the pressure and in a moment, it completely wrapped the soaring dragon shears. Taoist soaring dragon did not transform into a human form, nor did he struggle. Chapter 30-36. The Tengjiao scissors were bound by the heaven-binding chain. Layers of runes flowed outside the heaven-binding chain. The breath of the Tongjiao scissors was completely covered by these runes. Even the golden light did not leak out anymore. Immortal Yu Qing stretched out his left hand, which became several feet long, and grabbed the heaven-binding chain from top to bottom. Between the 5 fingers of the heaven-binding chain, there were countless runes flowing like flowing water. The spiritual light within a few miles poured into the palm at the same time. Half a mile of the heaven-binding chain was completely controlled by Immortal Yu Qing. As Immortal Yu Qing's hand fell, this half-mile was slowly compressed, and the heaven-binding chain also slowly turned into its original silk ribbon. Hum! Roar! The huge roar sounded again, and the angry dragon roar also came out from the heaven-binding chain. Evil creature! At this time, do you still want to resist? Immortal Yu Qing said coldly. The spiritual power in his hand was more powerful, and mixed with the heaven's might, it covered the heaven-binding chain. Whoosh! Suddenly, a golden light shot up into the sky from the heaven-binding chains. The heaven-binding chains couldn't help but expand to dozens of feet. But then, the golden light disappeared again, and the heaven-binding chains rapidly shrank again. Obviously, the Tongjiao scissors inside became smaller again. At this time, an extremely dazzling golden light flashed in the middle of the heaven-binding chain like a flash in the pan, and a few feet-long dragon-shaped scissors flew out from the heaven-binding chain. Then, the scissors disappeared. Ah! When the scissors disappeared, Immortal Yu Qing in the distance let out a heart-wrenching scream. The huge palm that was incomparably powerful just now quickly shrank in the air. Immortal Yu Qing, who was surrounded by strong spiritual power, looked at the left arm that was cut off by the Tongjiao scissors in the air in disbelief, and his eyes flashed with incomparable fear. Swish! Almost silently, the Tongjiao scissors without the golden light appeared in the air only a few miles away from Immortal Yu Qing. There was still half a drop of blood on the scissors. Rumble! A muffled thunder came out, and the space controlled by the heaven's might and pressure began to shake. A very long crack appeared in the air, and the space showed signs of collapse. The spiritual light that rushed into Immortal Yu Qing's head also began to stop. Seeing this scene, how could Taoist Yu Qing dare to stay a moment longer? Woo! With a howl, Taoist Yu Qing's body turned into a ray of light. He carried his broken limbs and broken spirit treasures as he charged towards Sun Yunzi. At the same time, the ray of light caught up. Sun Yunzi watched as the Tao sect fell from the peak of victory to the trough of defeat. He sighed and opened a gap in the heaven and earth yin-yang demon ceiling formation to release Zhenren Yuqing. After spiritual master Yu Qing left, the entire magic formation was still filled with a faint heavenly might. Within the heavenly might, the skeletal spiritual master Tang Jiao slowly revealed his figure. At this time, Taoist master Soaring Dragon's face became increasingly yellow. Previously, there was still some flesh on his face, but now, it had completely turned into a kind of bone. His reddish-yellow eyes flashed with even more ruthlessness. Taoist Soaring Dragon stood there calmly. His Taoist robe did not move at all. The heavenly might seemed to have no effect on him. Sun Yunzi was even more shocked. How was this the cultivation of a second-grade sword transformation? Even a third-grade sword transformation stage cultivator was only at this level. My sword domain wins this formation. Chong Taishu's figure appeared. He glanced at Taoist Soaring Dragon and cupped his hands. Sword friend Soaring Dragon, please return to Sky Patrol City. Taoist Soaring Dragon did not reply. The golden light around his body flourished again, covering his face. He suddenly charged into the green light formation. Old Chong! Sun Yunzi coldly revealed his figure and said angrily, "You weapon cultivator? How can you be a second-grade sword transformation stage cultivator?" Is that so? Didn't your Tao sect confirm it before the battle? Taoist Soaring Dragon is a second-grade sword transformation stage cultivator. Chong Taishu said indifferently. It's just that Taoist Soaring Dragon's strength is close to that of a third-grade sword transformation stage cultivator. What's so strange about that? Furthermore, old man Sun Yunzi, you should know that in my sword domain, regardless of whether it's a weapon cultivator, bird cultivator or beast cultivator of the same cultivation level, they will all be stronger than sword cultivators for a long time. To tell you the truth, when I face Taoist Soaring Dragon, I also have to call him senior. I don't dare to overstep my boundaries. But so what? My sword domain did not violate our agreement with the Dao sect. Daoist Soaring Dragon's cultivation is indeed a second-grade sword transformation stage cultivator. You! Sun Yunzi was somewhat speechless. Furthermore, your Dao sect doesn't seem to be honest, right? Cheng Taishu said coldly. Daoist Yuqing is clearly a late nascent soul stage cultivator, yet he still used some old man's talisman to suppress his cultivation. He's just pretending to be young. If you want to say that my sword domain is playing tricks, isn't your Dao sect the same? Hearing this, Sun Yunzi was completely speechless. Forget it, Sun Yunzi waved his hand and said. You sword cultivator win this battle. Let's move on to the second round. I want to see if your Huan country can find a second weapon cultivator of second-grade sword transformation stage. Hee hee, Cheng Taishu laughed. I've disappointed you, old man. There's only one second-grade illusory sword weapon cultivator like Daoist Soaring Dragon in my sword domain. There's no second one. Then, Cheng Taishu looked behind Sun Yunzi and said, I wonder which late nascent soul stage cultivator will be going up for the second round. Humph. How can it be late nascent soul stage? It can only be mid-nascent soul stage. Sun Yunzi snorted coldly. Then, a ball of fiery red light flew out from the formation. That light was like a jumping flame and flew behind Sun Yunzi. However, this flame blocked everyone's line of sight. Even Cheng Taishu could not see who was inside the flame. Meng country's Tai Ching sect has already lost. Next up is Shi country or Lian country. Cheng Taishu looked at the flame and said indifferently. In these two countries, there are mid-nascent soul stage and fire attribute cultivators close to late nascent soul stage. There are quite a few of them. I wonder which sect leader is coming to die. What about your Huan country's swordsman? Sun Yunzi asked. When the swordsman appears, my Dao sect's cultivator will definitely appear. Why are you guessing? Ha ha ha, Cheng Taishu laughed loudly. Just now, this sword said that there's only one second-grade illusory sword weapon cultivator like Daoist Soaring Dragon in my sword domain. There's no second one. But if we can find another first-grade illusory sword weapon cultivator, I'm afraid it won't be hard. Fairy Luo Hua, please come out. Following Cheng Taishu's voice, a ball of misty green light flew out from the green light sword array. This green light also had a human figure. However, this green light was different from Daoist Soaring Dragon's golden light. It was faint and indistinct, like a layer of cloud clothing. When the green light flew to the left of Cheng Taishu, the green light faded away and a frail woman with delicate features was revealed within the green light. This girl was similar to Daoist Soaring Dragon. They were both extremely thin. Other than her beautiful hair and the green cloud clothing, if one were to look at the lines, one would not be able to tell that this girl was a girl. Furthermore, what was extremely special was that Daoist Soaring Dragon's face was long and narrow while this girl's face was square. Although delicate and pretty, it was also full and round. You. Hearing Cheng Taishu's words and seeing that this girl was only a first-grade sword transformation stage cultivator, Sun Yunzi's expression changed drastically. You actually already prepared to give up on this second round? Cheng Taishu rolled his eyes and said thoughtfully, when did this old man say that I was going to give up on this second round? Could it be that what this old man said just now was all nonsense? As long as the weapon cultivators of my sword domain reach the first-grade sword transformation stage, they will be comparable to a second-grade sword transformation stage cultivator. Killing a middle nascent soul stage cultivator is a bit difficult, but defeating or not losing, I'm afraid it's also very easy, right? Alas, this old man calculated and calculated, but I really missed out on the weapon cultivator. Sun Yunzi sighed. Why don't you just admit defeat? Let this old man see. Who will go up for the third round of your sword cultivator? You actually have such great confidence. At this moment, Sun Yunzi was already somewhat worried. He did not know who would go up for the next round of the sword cultivator battle. That Daoist He Ping, who had always been peaceful and did not like to fight, might really not be his opponent. Hee hee, old man Sun Yunzi, we haven't even fought yet. How do you know that my sword cultivator will lose? No matter what, you have to let this sword see who from your Dao sect will fight, right? How could Cheng Taishu admit defeat just like that? However, When the flames next to Sun Yunzi retracted and he saw the three elders of the ardent fire mountain wearing Taoist robes, Cheng Taishu was dumbstruck. Sun Yunzi, our agreement seems to be that one person from my sword domain and one person from your cultivation 3 kingdoms, right? Why did you let Hua Zhishan, Hua Yishui, and Hua Pekong all come up? Hee, old man Cheng, think about our agreement again. Sun Yunzi laughed and said, this old man only said that my cultivation 3 kingdoms would each send a sect to fight your sword cultivator battle, but I never said that each sect would only send one person. Moreover, the 3 Taoist friends from the ardent fire mountain are originally compatriots of 3 lifetimes. They are 3 against 1 swordsman, and 3 against 10 swordsmen. How do you want this old man to separate the 3 of them? Ha! Cheng Taishu faced the sky and laughed loudly. If not for his sword-light body, he would have probably even shed tears. He pointed his finger and said, Sun Yunzi, only now did this sword finally see the sanctimonious appearance of you Dao sect cultivators. You all only played around in the details of your words. You really lost all your face. If the cultivators from the cultivation 3 kingdoms heard that you used such a despicable method, what would they say about you? For the victory of my Dao sect, this old man will definitely do anything. Sun Yunzi's expression was calm. Didn't your Huan kingdom also treat the weapon cultivator as a sword cultivator? We can be considered to be on par with each other. No one can say that the other is despicable. Moreover, this old man defeated your sword cultivator in 3 battles. The Dawn Rain continent will only praise this old man's wisdom. Who can say that this old man is sanctimonious? Everything in this world is written by the victors. It has never been the right of the losers. I reckon that no one wanted to fight. Looking back, the Tanhua is still very satisfied with the description of the battle. Many thanks for everyone's support. Chapter 30-37. You can make such an ugly thing sound so beautiful. I feel disgusted. Cheng Taishu thought about the agreement between him and Sun Yunzi. Indeed, it was not specified that there was only one person. It was all his fault for taking things for granted. Of course, Cheng Taishu was also guilty, so he did not think about it carefully. What could he do if he regretted it now? Fairy Luo Hua. Thank you for your trouble. Cheng Taishu bowed extremely respectfully, then ignored Sun Yunzi and returned to the green light sword pillar. Sun Yunzi was laughing loudly. Although the 3 elders of the ardent fire mountain had just entered the middle stage of the nascent soul stage, they had cultivated together since they were young. Now that they had entered the middle stage of the nascent soul stage together, their minds were connected. In addition, they had used a combination attack since they were young. To be honest, the 3 of them together could catch up to a cultivator who had just entered the late stage of the nascent soul stage. They were even more powerful than Taoist Yu Qing, who had not taken off the Tai Ching spirit-stabilizing talisman. This was Sun Yunzi's trump card. The most amazing thing was that the 3 elders of the ardent fire mountain had not announced to the outside world that they had entered the middle stage of the nascent soul stage together. The sword cultivators of the Huan country did not know about this at all. The sword cultivator's attention was probably focused on the large sects like the Splendid sect and the Tai Ching sect. He simply didn't think much about the ardent fire mountain. Therefore, placing 3 mid-nascent soul stage cultivators in the gambling match was a sure kill move for the sword cultivator. However, after witnessing Taoist Tang Jiao angrily cutting off Taoist Yu Qing's arm, and hearing Cheng Taishu's respectful tone towards this thin woman, Sun Yunzi could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. This guy just said that if a weapon cultivator and a sword cultivator were in the same realm, then the weapon cultivator's lifespan would definitely be longer and he would have to call them senior. And this woman, if I'm not wrong, she's also a weapon cultivator? Then, what kind of magic treasure did she integrate into? Immediately, Sun Yunzi, who had long regarded this victory as within his reach, was a little hesitant. After Sun Yunzi reminded him a few times, he turned into a stream of light and disappeared in mid-air. In the air, only the ugly Hua Zhishan, Hua Yishui, and Hua Pekong were left, as well as the thin and weak woman opposite them. It was an absolutely brutal scene of a beauty and a beast. Hua Zhishan vigilantly looked at the woman standing a few li away. Luo Hua Fairy only looked at them quietly, not saying a word. She even seemed shy under Hua Zhishan's gaze. The green light on the green robe gradually appeared, like a cloud covering the mountain, faintly blocking the woman's figure. Fight! Huazhishan roared as his body emitted a bright light. Every strand of light turned into little sparks that covered Huazhishan's body. The sparks grew bigger and bigger, and in the blink of an eye, a huge fireball appeared where Huazhishan was standing. The temperature of the fireball was extremely high. The edges of the fireball were pitch black, rippling like water. Even the void had been ignited. Roar! Roar! With another two sounds, Hua Yaishui and Hua Pekong also began to emit sparks. In an instant, 3 huge fireballs appeared in mid-air. Woo! A strange sound came from the center of the 3 fireballs, and a pitch-black light flew toward Luo Hua Fairy's green light. Although the pitch-black light was only the size of a thumb, everywhere it passed, the air around it would distort, and a terrifying aura was emitted from the light. This light is the flame essence spat out by the 3 Yuanying of the Blazing Fire Mountain's 3 elders. It contains their magic power. They are the bane of sword cultivators. Sun Yunzi said coldly, not to mention the sturdiness of a sword cultivator's body. Even if a weapon cultivator fused their magic treasures into their body, they would not be able to dodge the natal flames of the 3. Seeing the pitch-black light fly for a moment and then disappear, Zhu Qinghe looked to the side of Luo Hua Fairy and said in shock, the natal flames of 3 mid-nascent soul masters. Even a late nascent soul master would not be able to block it, right? Exactly. Sun Yunzi said calmly, and the 3's joint attack is not limited to this. Just as Zhu Qinghe had expected, that pitch-black brilliance appeared in front of Fairy Luo Hua. Although it was still 1,000 feet away, that blue brilliance was obviously impacted by the heat waves of the flame essence. It rapidly shrank back, and was actually forced into a deep depression. Although Zhu Qinghe was not in the field, he could not help but shrink his neck. He knew that the heat wave was extremely hot, and it was extremely easy to melt metal. He could not help but look forward to it. He did not know how the weapon cultivator would deal with it. However, just as Sun Yunzi said, Huazhishan and the others' methods were not limited to this. Just as the flame essence approached Luo Hua Fairy, the 3 large fireballs let out a hong 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 sound and rushed towards Luo Hua Fairy like the sun. The 3 fireballs attracted and repelled each other. Each of them had different trajectories. If Xiao Hua was here, he would definitely be able to see that the 3 fireballs smashing down were somewhat similar to the giant stone array on Sunset Island. With a loud whistling sound, the 3 incomparably powerful forces covered Luo Hua Fairy from a few miles away, blocking her escape route. The most frightening thing was that the 3 forces were faintly discernible, and at the same time, they were gradually fusing together. The triangular imprisonment gradually became one, and within the force, there was a strong heat wave that was several times more powerful than the flame essence's heat wave that soared into the sky. Woo-woo! At the same time that the 3 elders of Ardent Fire Mountain flew out, Luo Hua Fairy's green light also let out a roar. Unlike Daoist's soaring dragon, Luo Hua Fairy's green light became smaller and smaller. When the murderous flame essence rushed in front of Luo Hua Fairy, the green light had shrunk to a few feet in size and looked like a square. Gotcha! A faintly discernible sound came from the green light, and then a powerful suction force was born from the green light. The flame essence instantly disappeared in this suction force. As for the green light in all 4 directions, it only slightly increased in size before falling down again. It unexpectedly swallowed the flame essence without a sound, and simply didn't harm a single hair. At this time, the fireballs of the 3 elders of Ardent Fire Mountain were already less than a mile away. The tearing force was even greater, and it was simply tearing the void apart. However, the green light in all 4 directions simply ignored this tearing force, and suddenly rushed straight into the sky. A thin green light that looked like a thumb-sized spiral descended from the 4 directions. This green light rapidly rotated and rapidly expanded. In the blink of an eye, it covered an area of several miles, and the fireballs of the 3 elders of Ardent Fire Mountain were already enveloped by the green light. Since this was the case, the green light no longer expanded. It only crazily rotated and gradually shrank under the fireballs. So, just as the 3 elders of Ardent Fire Mountain suddenly rushed towards the green light in all 4 directions, a clear sound similar to the sound of nature was emitted from the green light in all 4 directions. A green cloud flashing with golden light fell from the green light in all 4 directions, and like a big net, it covered the 3 fireballs that were several dozen feet in size. Woo! The flames of the three fireballs flourished, wanting to burn this green cloud. However, without waiting for the flames to soar into the sky, the green cloud passed through the flames and the fireballs. Under the green light, all the heat waves, all the flying flames, and all the movements disappeared. After the green cloud passed through, the figures of the three elders of Ardent Fire Mountain were revealed under the green light in all four directions. The three elders of Ardent Fire Mountain looked at each other in disbelief, and then looked at the green light in all four directions above their heads. They hurriedly clapped their hands, and each of their magic treasures, each of their oppressive might, and even the hands of their nascent souls were about to be displayed. And at this moment, with a whoosh, another clear cry that sounded like the sounds of nature was emitted from the green light in all directions. Similarly, a green cloud that flashed with golden light descended from the green light in all directions. It seemed slow, but in reality, it covered a distance of 3,000 zhang in the blink of an eye. It passed through the magic treasures and nascent souls of the three elders of the Ardent Fire Mountain and landed on their bodies. Ah! 3 miserable screams sounded at the same time, and like a heaven-shaking roar, the bodies of Hua Zhishan, Hua Yaishui, and Hua Paikong disappeared along with the green cloud, and 3 nascent souls appeared under the green light in a panic. This is bad. Far away in the Great Formation, Sun Yunzi's face had long since turned pale. Just as Luo Hua Fairy's figure transformed into a green light and covered the 3 elders of Ardent Fire Mountain, Sun Yunzi understood that according to Chong Taishu's arrangement, there was no such thing as a third battle. Just by relying on Luo Hua Fairy, who seemed to be at the first grade of sword transformation realm, even if he, a late nascent soul realm cultivator, acted, he would definitely not be able to defeat her. When he saw Luo Hua Fairy's incomparably strange green cloud annihilate the fireball, and then the bodies of the 3 elders of Ardent Fire Mountain, he could not help but cry out in alarm. He understood in his heart that even these 3 nascent souls would not be able to escape. He had schemed against Chong Taishu for a long time, but in the end, he still fell into the trap of others. Sure enough, the nascent souls of the 3 elders of Ardent Fire Mountain looked at each other, and without prior agreement, they fled in 3 directions. With a flash of golden light, they disappeared. They wanted to borrow a moment of instant teleportation to rush out of the green light. Unfortunately, the green light flashed, and the nascent souls of the 3 elders of Ardent Fire Mountain appeared in their original positions. Within the area controlled by Luo Hua Fairy, the nascent souls were unable to teleport. So, another light sound was heard, and the deadly green cloud descended once again. Old Ghost Chong! Sun Yunzi did not dare to be negligent. He hurriedly appeared from the Great Formation and shouted, "My Dao sect has also lost the second battle. Luo Hua Fairy, please release the nascent souls of the 3 elders of Ardent Fire Mountain." Unfortunately, Chong Taishu's figure naturally appeared as well. He said with extreme regret, "Sun Yunzi, this is a senior invited by Taoist Master Soaring Dragon. This sword. I'm afraid I can't order him around." Sun Yunzi heard Chong Taishu's words and knew that it was true. With Chong Taishu's 3rd grade of sword transformation realm cultivation, he was likely not the opponent of this 1st grade of sword transformation realm equipment cultivator. The nascent souls of the 3 elders of Ardent Fire Mountain were at a loss of what to do. They helplessly watched the green cloud descend, unable to escape. Even if the 3 wanted to self-destruct their nascent souls, it was impossible. Chapter 30-38. When the green clouds passed through the 3 lonely nascent souls, everything disappeared. Within the green light, there were no longer any traces of the 3 elders of the Ardent Fire Mountain. Not to mention all the Dao sect cultivators, even all the swordsmen were dumbfounded. No one had ever seen such a fierce 1st grade sword transformation cultivator. However, things did not end there. Just as Chong Taishu was about to speak, the green light under the green light turned into a whirlpool and rushed toward the sky. This is... Chong Taishu and Sun Yunzi were both stunned, but their expressions immediately changed. As the cyan vortex soared into the sky, it rapidly expanded. By the time the cyan light covered the entire formation, the cyan vortex was already over 1,000 miles wide. Moreover, the edge of the whirlpool touched the Yin-Yang Universe Devil Sealing Array where the black and white whirlpool had stopped. Wang wang wang. Loud rumbling sounds came from the green light in all directions, echoing throughout the world. The green light really began to rotate in the opposite direction of the formation. The entire yin-yang devil ceiling formation uncontrollably began to emit a powerful sound. The gray sky that had already solidified actually began to reverse with this sound, once again turning into a black and white brilliance. And this brilliance once again entered the green quadrangle. Ha 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 ha. Chong Taishu clapped and laughed. Sun Yunzi, what else do you want this sword to say? Your Dao sect has lost 2 battles, and now the yin-yang universe devil ceiling array is about to be broken by us sword cultivators. Your Dao sect has already lost this battle. Sun Yunzi's face was already pale, and now it was as if he was about to die. He looked at the dissipating sky and said coldly, although this weapon cultivator is a first-grade sword transformation cultivator, her strength has already surpassed the realm of sword transformation. She isn't afraid of a spirit-severing senior attacking? You're absolutely right. She is a first-grade sword transformation cultivator, and has not surpassed the realm of sword transformation. Chong Taishu laughed. How could she cause a sword transformation cultivator to attack? Even if they wanted to make a move, would she allow them to find her tracks? Moreover, if she broke the rules, then wouldn't your Dao sect's Thunder Control sect's disciple, Wu Ming, already be suspected of breaking the rules in the first stage? Sun Yunzi frowned. Just as he was about to say something, a series of muffled sounds of thunder rang out. The black and white light screen began to collapse. Fairy Luo Hua actually managed to break the yin-yang universal demon ceiling formation by herself. Sun Yunzi didn't dare to continue talking to Chong Taishu. With a flash of light, his several hundred feet tall body disappeared. Chong Taishu looked at the huge black and white vortex with a complicated gaze. He muttered to himself in a low voice, the great battle of Dao and sword actually ended in such a situation. What schemes? What plans? They were all useless. Cultivation. Power. This was the eternal theme of this world. If I knew that Luo Hua Fairy was so powerful, I wouldn't have to do this. Unfortunately, she only agreed to help me once, and the price I have to pay this time is too high for her. There's always someone better than you out there, that's true. As he spoke, Chong Taishu's sword shadow also gradually disappeared and rushed into the green light sword pillar. Another hour later, after 40% of the gray color of the yin-yang universal demon ceiling formation disappeared, the black and white light suddenly fell down. The vortex formed by Fairy Luo Hua's green light also slowly converged. Finally, it turned into a green human figure. This human figure didn't waste any more time in the air, and immediately rushed towards the direction of the Huan Kingdom. Behind her, Immortal Tang Jiao's golden light also flew out. The 2 people disappeared in the sky in the blink of an eye. The 2 dissimulated men who ended the great battle of Dao and sword by raising their hands and feet calmly rose up. They were even more confident than Xiao Hua that day. Looking at the disappearing light, Chong Taishu, Chang Minghua, Qi Lian Dai, Zhou Ming and Ruo Tian, who had recovered their physical bodies, bowed respectfully. Sun Yunzi and Immortal Lu and I looked gloomy, and no one knew what they were thinking. The Tiani green light sword formation of Sky Patrol City was still shining. The yin-yang universal demon ceiling formation of Dao sect had been broken. The formation had ended, and the bitter fruit had been delivered to the mouth of Dao sect's cultivators. If it wasn't for Dao sect, the 3 kingdoms wouldn't have known this sad news. Even in the so-called meeting hall of Tongmu City, the people were still looking forward to it. However, there weren't many people who stayed in front of the 2 mysterious gatehouses of the nameless and terrifying phoenixes. Compared to the outcome of the great battle, these 2 mysteries were much more insignificant. Although there weren't many people, there were still some people. In particular, a tall foundation establishment cultivator with a face full of beard and a ferocious-looking face was standing in front of the nameless gatehouse with his hands clasped behind his back. He was looking at the few vines. His gaze fell on one of the vines that wasn't very tall and had Xiao Hua's name written on it. He didn't speak for a long time. Because of this cultivator's ferocious face, the nearby cultivators avoided him. There weren't many people in this place, so no cultivators came close to him. However, this cultivator looked at him for a moment and said faintly without turning his head, "Kind son, ever since I found your tracks in Sky Patrol City, you've been following me. If we were to say that we met by chance in Sky Patrol City, but when I went to Hang Country, you followed me. Later on, when I went to Drifting Cloud Lake, you still followed me. Now that I'm in Tongmu City, you followed me. I'm really puzzled. Perfected Dewey, you've finally spoken. A thin scholar dressed in ordinary clothes slowly walked out of the crowd with a feather fan in his hand. This scholar also looked like a Foundation establishment cultivator. However, if he didn't take the initiative to walk out of the crowd, even a golden core cultivator's divine sense wouldn't be able to distinguish him from the crowd. It was as if he was in the crowd, but at the same time, he didn't seem to be in the crowd. The scholar's voice wasn't loud, but it was abnormally clear. I thought you would expose me in the sword tomb, but I didn't expect you to endure until Tongmu City. Your self-restraint is much better than before. Why would I expose you? Perfected Dewey still didn't turn his head and replied, I have my own business, and you have yours. Although we're on the same path, we might not be doing the same thing, right? But I feel that you and I seem to be doing the same thing. Kind Sun said faintly. You and I seem to be looking for the same person. Hiss. Perfected Dewey took a breath of cold air and turned his head slightly. He glanced at Kind Sun, who walked to his side and was dozens of feet away, and said curiously, Could it be that your Immortal Ascension sect is also looking for? At this point, Perfected Dewey hesitated and thought of his master's advice. Kind Sun seemed to understand Perfected Dewey's scruples and said with a smile, Yes, you don't have to tell me who you're looking for. I won't tell you either. However, I can tell you that according to my analysis, the person I'm looking for should be the most mysterious person in this Taoist sword war. That's right. Perfected Dewey was shocked. Moreover, I was entrusted by someone to look for this mysterious person. But this mysterious person suddenly appeared in the Taoist sword war, and according to what I know, John Doe was definitely John Doe before the war. His cultivation is extremely low. Kind Sun continued, but this person is extremely powerful and has some impressive achievements in body cultivation. Yes. Perfected Dewey clapped his hands and said, It seems that it's not enough for him to reach the realm of nascent soul realm. I'm afraid that there are many secrets that others don't know, which allowed him to have such strength and influence the situation of the Taoist sword war. The most terrible thing is that John Doe seems to know swordsmanship and has sword origin. Kind Sun continued, Although I don't know why John Doe went to Million Mountain, he can go in and come out alive, which is enough to prove that he is not simple. Such an extraordinary person is exactly what I'm looking for. Perfected Dewey narrowed his eyes and reminded, And I found the clue first. Yes, this person is exactly what I'm looking for. Kind Sun also nodded and replied, But John Doe is very cunning. Even if 2 cultivators at the middle stage of nascent soul realm chased after him, he still escaped back to the sect. If it's just about who came first, I'm afraid he can only be free again. Fellow Taoist Dewey, do you think we should make a deal? A deal? Perfected Dewey shook his head slightly. I don't want to make any deal. I just want to capture John Doe, so that I can complete the task entrusted by others. Kind Sun smiled and said, If you refused before the war, I could still believe it. But now, I want to ask you, John Doe has the cultivation of the early stage of nascent soul realm and knows the thunder escape technique. Do you think you can easily capture him? If you can't, with John Doe's identity, as long as he escapes and announces this matter to the public, not to mention you, even your sect, will become the target of public criticism, right? Give you. Well, there is only one chance for me. One shot. Perfected Dewey bit his lips slightly and looked at the vines, as if he was thinking about Kind Sun's opinion. In addition, Kind Sun hesitated and probed again. Think about the person who entrusted you and me. What is their identity? Is it that simple for them to take seriously? If you and I don't work together, I'm afraid there will be a mistake. But, Perfected Dewey said again, after capturing John Doe, do you bring him to Immortal Music Sect? Or to Immortal Ascension Sect? Haha, Kind Sun laughed and said, You're too rigid. Think about it, since you and I are looking for this person, then the person you and I entrusted must know about this matter, and we understand each other. Although you and I don't know the reason for this matter, and we can't predict it, but when we capture John Doe, you and I will send a message to the person you and I entrusted to make a decision. Why are you and I worried about it? It's not a treasure that can be fought for, so what do you and I have to worry about? Chapter 30-39. Good, Reverend Dewey clapped his hands and said. Since that's the case, let's make a deal. Xianxia raised his hand without hesitation, and the two clapped their hands to make an oath. Xianxia smiled and said, now that that guy has returned to the sect and has the sect's protection, it won't be easy for us to make a move. However, I presume that fellow Taoist also has some information in that sect like this old man. Let's wait near his sect. Once that guy leaves the sect, we only need to secretly follow him. Once he's far away from his sect, wouldn't it be easy to capture him together? Yes, this is also what this old man is thinking. Reverend Dewey nodded. Let's do as fellow Taoist says. We'll go there immediately. Good. Xianxia agreed. Then, without saying anything else, he turned around and disappeared into the crowd. Reverend Dewey also turned around. The cultivators on his left and right all avoided him and left the bird's nest in a moment. As for the other cultivators not far from the two, they only saw the two standing there for a moment and then left. No one would have thought that these two were mid-nascent soul-stage cultivators. It was even more impossible for them to know what they were discussing. Xiaohua couldn't have known that his crisis was coming. He just anxiously flew to the Myriad Thunder Valley to see what had happened. When he was still far away from the Myriad Thunder Valley, he wanted to release his Buddhist sense, but he was afraid of any mistakes, so he restrained himself and only released his divine sense when he was a few miles away. However, to his surprise, there weren't many Imperial Thunder Sect disciples gathered in the outer valley of the Myriad Thunder Valley. Instead, there were more than 10 Qi refining disciples wandering around, looking more like they were on duty. Who? Those disciples obviously noticed Xiaohua's divine sense and very vigilantly stopped in mid-air. The leader of the early-stage Foundation Establishment Realm disciples even released his divine sense. When they saw that it was Xiaohua who came back, these disciples actually had the same expression as the disciples on duty at the Sky Thunder Peak. Their faces showed a strange expression. I'm back. Who are you waiting for? Xiaohua's figure landed and asked coldly. Disciple is on duty at Gen Thunder Palace. The leading disciple stood in mid-air and led a group of respectful Qi refining disciples to salute. He didn't report his name and said, I was ordered to patrol the Myriad Thunder Valley to prevent disciples from attacking the valley. Since Senior Marshal Brother Xiao is back, please enter the valley. Oh, Xiaohua put away his cold face and squeezed out a smile. He cupped his hands and said, Thank you. After he finished speaking, he didn't ask any more questions. He activated his magic power and flew into the Myriad Thunder Valley. Although this place was already the outer valley, it was obvious that Zhan Quan and the others weren't in this cave. They must be hiding in the inner valley. Seeing Xiaohua's thin figure disappear, the leading disciple hurriedly clapped his hands and took out a token. He handed it to a disciple and urged, Zhen Yi, quickly go and report that Xiaohua has returned to the mountain. Send more people over. Yes, I understand. The aura-refining disciple took the token and flew away in a hurry. Alas, this Xiaohua. After the disciple gave the order, he let out a sigh of relief. Since he has already escaped, why can't he stay for a few more days? The whole Imperial Thunder Sect is in a mess because of you. Now that you're back. Isn't that? After flying for a while, Xiaohua bumped into a few disciples. When these disciples saw Xiaohua, they were all excited and shouted from afar, Second Martial Uncle, Second Martial Uncle, Second Martial Uncle is back. However, after jumping around for a while, it immediately calmed down and stood respectfully in the air. Hee hee. Xiaohua laughed when he saw these lively female disciples. He knew that there wasn't much abnormality in the Myriad Thunder Valley, so he stopped. Without waiting for him to speak, Dui Qiming's disciples hurriedly bowed and saluted, Disciple greets Second Martial Uncle. And get up. Xiaohua waved his hand and said, Are you patrolling? Yes, Second Martial Uncle. The one in front was a female disciple named Zhang Wan. She said obediently, Although there are Gen Thunder Palace's disciples patrolling the outer valley, Master felt that we should show our attitude. Therefore we formed 4 teams and patrolled the valley every 4 hours. Xiaohua nodded and asked, How's the situation these days? This. Zhang Wan hesitated slightly and said in a low voice, Is it all right? All right. What's all right? Xiaohua said with a smile. There aren't any foundation building or golden core cultivators who came to my Myriad Thunder Valley to make things difficult for you, right? No, Zhang Wan said with a smile. After Martial Uncle showed his might and drove away those aura-refining disciples, Giant Thunder Palace sent disciples over. Later, Gen Thunder Palace's disciples patrolled the valley every day. Originally, some foundation building masters came to seek justice for their disciples. However, they were all blocked outside the valley by those disciples and didn't enter. Senior sister. Fan Yumming couldn't help but say anxiously, how could it be as simple as you say? Although those foundation building masters who didn't know right from wrong didn't enter the valley, they still gathered outside the valley and clamored for many days. Later, didn't they send out many letters of challenge? There were even a few Golden Core Grandmasters who came outside the valley. If it weren't for Gen Thunder Palace's Grandmaster Gen Qing and Jade Archive Hall's Hallmaster coming to persuade them, I'm afraid they really would have charged into Myriad Thunder Valley. Martial Uncle, you said that they didn't put our Myriad Thunder Valley in their eyes. You risked your life in the great battle of Dowan's sword and fought a bloody battle, but because of a small flaw, they forced you like this. Is there still justice in this? Justice? Hee. Xiao Hua sneered and muttered to himself in a low voice. Junior sister. Zhang Wan glared at Fan Yumming and said in a low voice, didn't Grandmaster give orders? Yes. Grandmaster sympathized with Martial Uncle and told him to go to Myriad Thunder Valley to stand guard once he returned. Fan Yumming's temper was also somewhat irritable. At this time, she didn't care about anything and shouted, but is Martial Uncle the kind of person who would hide? Now, Junior sister Fan. Seeing that Fan Yumming still wanted to say something, Zhang Wan pretended to be angry. Seeing that Zhang Wan was angry, Fan Yumming didn't dare to say anything and only muttered to herself. Others couldn't hear anything. Xiao Hua also didn't pursue the matter and asked casually, where's your master? Is he in the valley? Master. Zhang Wan was somewhat hesitant. Fan Yumming wanted to rush to say it, but when she opened her mouth, she lowered her head again. At the side, Xianxia said carefully, Martial Uncle Master followed. Martial Uncle and the others to Thunder Palace a few days ago and hasn't returned yet. Martial Uncle and the others? Xiao Hua's face turned cold and he said indifferently, what are you waiting for? Tell me the truth. Yes, seeing that Xiao Hua was angry, Zhang Wan trembled and was about to bow in answer when Zhuo Minghui's voice sounded, seemingly tired. Xiao Hua, don't make things difficult for the children. Come back and talk. Yes, Master's wife. Xiao Hua immediately retracted his anger and didn't stay any longer, flying towards the cave residence. AI. Seeing that Xiao Hua flew away, Zhang Wan looked at everyone. Although she was younger than Xianxia and the others, she had more experience, so she had always been the leader of the four. Xianxia and the others had the same expression as Zhang Wan, also carrying some worry. Martial Uncle. You're back too early. Fan Yumming said quickly. Let's go. Zhang Wan glared at her and was the first to fly away. Senior sister, Martial Uncle is back. Do we still need to patrol? Fan Yumming hurriedly chased after them and shouted. Can't you talk less? Zhang Wan didn't even look at her and said indifferently. Fan Yumming opened her mouth and sighed at the same time. She didn't want to talk too much, but these days in Myriad Thunder Valley, she had to swallow her anger and humiliation. It wasn't easy to see Xiao Hua who could support them, so Fan Yumming didn't know why she was so talkative. Inside the cave residence, Xiao Hua looked at the slightly deserted surroundings and raised his eyebrows. He looked at Zhuo Minghui and said, Master's wife, what's going on with senior brother and junior brother Cui? Hee, it's actually nothing. Zhuo Minghui's expression didn't change as she said with a smile. Hongshan and Qiming are originally working in Thunder Palace, even if they aren't in the valley every day. Recently, because there have been many things about you in Thunder Palace, Xiangyang and Qing Lian were also called over by the Palace Master. This isn't the first time this has happened, so it's nothing. Xiao Hua knew that Zhuo Minghui didn't want to make things difficult for him, so he nodded indifferently and looked at the cave residents. Xianxia and Wuqing, who had always been cultivating in Thunder Palace, stayed in Myriad Thunder Valley. Cui Yingying was playing with Wuqing in the cave residence. Zhan Quan and the other disciples were standing nearby listlessly. Where was the excitement they had when he returned to the mountain? Seeing that Xiao Hua didn't have much of a reaction, Zhuo Minghui paused and said, The Dao Sword War has been going on for more than 10 years. I'm afraid you haven't been cultivating in seclusion all this time, right? Now that your master is in seclusion and hasn't come out, Xiangyang and Hongshan are in Thunder Palace, so there's no one guarding Myriad Thunder Valley. You better go stand guard there. Disciple must listen to master's orders. Xiaohua bowed and said, however, Disciple heard that there are some blind Foundation establishment disciples who want to challenge Disciple. Disciple wants to see which disciples don't want to live anymore. Xiaohua. Zhua Minghui frowned and scolded, I know you're doing this for the sake of my Myriad Thunder Valley's face, but don't forget that this is my Imperial Thunder Sect, not the battlefield of the Dao Sword War. There's no need to talk about life and death as soon as you open your mouth, and there's no need to go to the Thunder Arena for everything. He, Disciple understands. Xiaohua said with a smile. Disciple just wants to see how many tough bones there are in my Imperial Thunder Sect that aren't afraid of death. Godfather. Xianxia smiled. Do you really want to see? Li Zhua Minghui scolded Xianxia. He. Xianxia said respectfully, these are all people who want to challenge Godfather. Boy feels that Godfather should take a look. Humph. Zhua Minghui snorted coldly and said no more. After Xianxia obtained Zhua Minghui's tacit approval, he clapped his hands and took out several hundred jade slips from his storage pouch. He placed all of them on the jade table and said with a smile, Godfather, you're now the most popular person in my Imperial Thunder Sect. There are actually several hundred or even several thousand Foundation establishment masters who want to challenge you. Boy heard from the disciples of Thunder Palace that this is something that hasn't happened in my Imperial Thunder Sect for thousands of years. Chapter 30-40. Humph. Xiaohua waved his hand and took the jade slips into his hand. He released his divine sense and looked through them, then said curiously, Strange, why aren't there any letters of challenge from Thunder Palace? No matter what, you're still a disciple of my Thunder Palace. Zhua Minghui said indifferently. Thunder Palace didn't have many disciples that came that day, and it's natural for you to teach them a lesson. Even their teachers didn't dare to say anything. But the other Thunder Palaces can't. So that's how it is. Xiaohua laughed. Looks like the disciples of my Thunder Palace aren't a bunch of idiots. What nonsense. Zhua Minghui rebuked. I didn't allow you to accept these letters of challenge, but others didn't either. That's why I let Lear accept them. Are you really going to accept them one by one? Haha, Master's wife. Disciple was just joking with them. How are they worthy of Disciple's challenge? Xiaohua stood up. If it's not a life and death situation, Disciple's methods will only be used against the enemy, not against my own martial brothers. Zhua Minghui let out a long sigh. She now knew how helpless Xiaohua was back then. How could she not be happy when Xiaohua was so sensible? Let's go. Foster father has something to tell you. Xiaohua waved at Xianxia and winked. Yes. Xianxia was overjoyed. He ignored the letters of challenge on the jade table and jumped out from behind the jade chair with a smile. Master's wife. Disciple is returning to the cave. Xiaohua bid farewell to Zhua Minghui. And go. Zhua Minghui said with a smile. Give Lear some pointers on his cultivation. When you weren't here, he talked about it every day. Yes. Xiaohua replied. Disciple won't hide anything. After Xiaohua led the excited Xianxia away, Zhua Minghui looked at the letters of challenge on the jade table and sighed. She really didn't know how to deal with these letters of challenge. But after sighing, her gaze fell on Wu Qing's indifferent face, and she asked somewhat helplessly, Wu Qing? Mother. Wu Qing replied. Although his tone was very intimate, it looked like he was talking to an ordinary person. Your second senior brother. At this point, Zhua Minghui didn't seem to know how to express herself. She hesitated a little and said, He hasn't returned to the Myriad Thunder Valley for more than 10 years. You should be closer to him. Yes. Mother. The boy understands. Wu Qing was still respectful. The boy is very close to second brother in his heart. Others don't know the closeness in your heart. Zhua Minghui advised earnestly. Look at Lear. Lear is Lear, Wu Qing is Wu Qing. It's not the same. Wu Qing remained unmoved and said, Lear's intimacy is not something a boy can learn. Boy felt that a senior martial brother was a senior martial brother. He was different from the other senior martial brothers in Zhenlei Palace. A boy would also be different from others. As for how senior martial brother sees the boy, or how others see the boy doesn't care. It was rare for Wu Qing to say so much, but Zhuo Minghui was still dissatisfied. However, she couldn't say anything more. On the side, Zhan Quan and the others were envious. They were different from Xianxia and Wu Qing. They couldn't go over their master to get Xiaohua's guidance, but Wu Qing, according to Zhuo Minghui, didn't he want Xiaohua's guidance? Xiaohua's cultivation level was needless to say. That day, his lightning-attracting technique shocked thousands of aura-refining disciples. The spoils of war Xiaohua brought back from the Dao sword battle were envied by these disciples. They were all worried about dying on the battlefield, but this martial uncle of hers actually made a fortune with it. Wasn't Myriad Thunder Valley's current prosperity all because of Xiaohua's spoils of war? If Xiaohua didn't have a special ability, how could he have such a harvest? To be able to get Xiaohua's guidance, these disciples were all looking forward to it. However, Wu Qing didn't care. Seeing that Zhuo Minghui didn't say anything, he didn't say anything. Even when Cui Yingying walked around him, he didn't pay much attention to her. Looking at this son who seemed to be different from the ways of the world, Zhuo Minghui was really helpless. She couldn't help but think of her helplessness when she went into closed-door meditation. Let's wait until he comes out of closed-door meditation. Just as Zhuo Minghui and the others expected, Xiaohua brought Xianxia back to his own Immortal's cave to take a look at the Immortal's cave that hadn't been used much since it was opened. Xiaohua smiled, turned around and said, Adoptive father, who cleaned this Immortal's cave? Naturally it's boy. Xianxia said respectfully. Before Zhan Quan and the others came, it was boy who cleaned this place every time he came back to Myriad Thunder Valley. Later, father let Zhan Quan and the others clean, but they were stopped by boy. Adoptive father's Immortal's cave can only be cleaned by boy. Other people, they don't have the qualifications. Ha ha. Xiaohua laughed and looked at Xianxia, who was beaming with joy, and said, Adoptive father knows you've worked hard. Today, adoptive father wants to ask you, where did you get this secret technique to conceal your cultivation? Xianxia laughed and slapped his forehead. Like a ripple of water, Xianxia's cultivation slowly changed to the late stage of the 11th layer of the qi refining realm. Boy knew that I couldn't hide it from adoptive father. Humph. Your father is probably still complaining about adoptive father in his heart, right? Xiaohua said unhappily. Come here, let adoptive father see. Yes, Xianxia smiled embarrassedly and walked to Xiaohua's side. Xiaohua pointed his hand, and a strand of quintessential essence passed over. Give me the secret technique jade slip. Xiaohua said indifferently. Yes. Xianxia didn't dare to be negligent. He slapped his hand and took out an old jade slip from his storage bag and handed it to Xiaohua. Xiaohua closed his eyes. He seemed to be looking at the jade slip, but also seemed to be looking at Xianxia's cultivation realm. He also seemed to be waiting for Xianxia's explanation. However, after waiting for about 5 minutes, Xianxia still didn't say anything. Xiaohua smiled bitterly. That's right. Back then, he didn't tell Xianxia anything. Now, it was normal that Xianxia didn't tell him anything. Xianxia was a bit better. He allowed Xiaohua to check his cultivation. Even now, Xianxia probably didn't know his own cultivation. So Xiaohua opened his mouth again. Where did you get the secret technique? If you don't want to say, then adoptive father won't let you say. However, adoptive father wants to ask, did someone give it to you? Thank you, adoptive father. Xianxia saw that Xiaohua wasn't going to pursue the matter and was overjoyed. However, adoptive father, please don't worry. Boy, how can you just casually take other people's things? This jade slip is an ownerless item. Actually, being able to conceal one's cultivation is indeed an interesting thing. However, if it's too much, it won't be good. Based on your situation, concealing it to the early stage of the 11th layer of qi refining is enough. Don't forget that when you were young, your aptitude was too outstanding. It was only because your father was involved that he cared too much about you. If other people thought about it, wouldn't they know that you have a secret technique? Xiaohua said indifferently. In that case, what's the use of your secret technique? Boy knows. Xianxia said embarrassedly. When Boy first obtained the secret technique, he was too curious and concealed it too much. It's a bit difficult to correct it now. If there's a chance in the future, Boy will definitely listen to adoptive father's advice. Xiaohua returned the jade slip to Xianxia and said, "Your jade slip isn't complete, and there are some flaws in the secret technique. Adoptive father has already corrected it for you." Xianxia was overjoyed. When he took the jade slip and looked at it, he was even more overjoyed. He had cultivated this secret technique for many years, so how could he not know the wonders of Xiaohua's correction? Moreover, behind the secret technique, there were even more chants that far exceeded what was recorded in this secret technique. They were some superficial knowledge of Xiaohua's sun-shrouding art. In Xianxia's eyes, these superficial knowledge were incomparably profound. Many thanks for adoptive father's help. Xianxia carefully put away the jade slip. You're welcome. Xiaohua smiled. That day, adoptive father promised you a great divine ability. Later, adoptive father found out that adoptive father was a bit arrogant. With adoptive father's current cultivation, what great divine ability can he have? However, even if he doesn't have a great divine ability, adoptive father still has some minor divine abilities. However, biting off more than you can chew is the right thing to do. Adoptive father didn't dare to teach you too much. Now that adoptive father has returned to the mountain, I'll teach you one first. When your cultivation is successful, it won't be too late to teach you the others. Yes, adoptive father. Xianxia was even more overjoyed. He probed, adoptive father, that lightning-attracting technique. Can you teach Boy? Lightning-attracting technique? Xiaohua frowned. He had previously considered this technique, but recently, he had obtained the thunder-flashing lightning technique in Misty Mountain. He felt that this lightning-attracting technique was inferior and couldn't be considered too powerful. Moreover, Xianxia's cultivation was still shallow. This lightning-attracting technique might not be as useful as God's guidance, right? You don't want to consider anything else? Xiaohua seemed to want to change Xianxia's mind. For example, a technique that can strengthen divine sense? Adoptive father has such a secret technique? Xianxia's eyes lit up as he exclaimed. How about it? Do you still want to choose the lightning-attracting technique? Xiaohua stared straight at Xianxia, waiting for his choice. Xianxia laughed. Boy wants to learn. I'll listen to adoptive father's arrangements. You child. Xiaohua laughed. Xianxia's greed was very similar to his. If he wasn't too greedy, how could he have his current cultivation? Forget it. Let adoptive father think about it. Xiaohua laughed and closed his eyes to think. In just half the time it takes to brew a cup of tea, Xiaohua waved his left hand. Xianxia felt the world spin in front of his eyes as he heard Xiaohua's thunderous voice. Go to sleep. When you wake up, adoptive father will fulfill your wish. Xianxia's body tensed up. His vision turned black and he immediately lost consciousness. Xiaohua waved his hand and Xianxia's body lay flat in the air. Xiaohua pointed his hand at Xianxia's dantian. After a moment, he waved his hand again and took out the few remaining cores of the male and female lightning beasts from the space. Zilala! Several streaks of lightning appeared between the two cores. Xiaohua muttered to himself for a moment, then formed a seal and hit the cores. The two cores split into tiny lightning cores that were smaller than a pinky finger. Sizzle! Following the cracking of these lightning cores, strands of lightning were born from these lightning cores. You're tuning in to the Wisdom Diary YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.